Good morning. This is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs. Oh my God, I've got a flying buttress going on here. Just check that out. All right. And the light's a little off, so let's fix that up here because I am very red. This might fix it. There we go. That's better. All right. Good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 5 and episode number 834 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Oh, Canada. Always 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Tuesday, January 20th. 2026, and it's I'm not sure. I think it's not so gray. I think there's some blue in the sky that's trying to make its way up, but I think it might be a cloudy day here again at the Beaver Lodge. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, a, Mr. Beaver A, and not with me as usual is my good friend Mr. Grizzly, who is in Yellowknife for work and doing relatively well, I have to say. Had a brief exchange with him yesterday, and yeah, things seem to be going well where he is. So I think he's there for 9 days or something. So it's a pretty long stint, and there's only about 3 hours of daylight, and then maybe an hour of the dawn and an hour of dusk or something at the moment. So it's yeah, he's on an interesting adventure. The one time I went to Yellowknife, I happened to be there. I got there literally the day after the solstice, so it was the opposite. It was all sun and just a little bit of dusk. So yeah, but we're wishing him well and hoping that everything goes well with his work that he has to do over there. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. We have a show for you today, kids and cubs. We'll be talking about EVs and the latest inflation data, how markets are reacting to Trump's threats, and stuff of the like as well. We'll be talking about the Prime Minister's travels, of course. He's in Davos, Switzerland now for the World Economic Forum, having left Qatar and China previously. So we'll talk about all those things today. But before we get into it, kids and cubs, how is your mental health today? Mine is doing very well. As you can see, I am much more energetic than I was when I did the afternoon show yesterday. I did sweat out whatever there was to sweat out over the course of the night. So I'm guessing that the reaction to the shots that I got have indeed passed, which is good. Had one in each arm, COVID in one, the flu in the other. And like I said, timed it well so that I could curl yesterday morning, but yesterday afternoon, like I said, when I was doing the show, as you could probably tell by my speech patterns, and the fact that it was taking me, I had to sometimes stop to gather my thoughts, that it was a little foggy yesterday. I'm back to my usual pace and usual energy this morning. And I feel a lot better as a result. Also, kits and cubs, I got some good sleep last night. For some reason, I was very early in doing some of tasks that I needed to do during the day. Yesterday, I usually save them for the end of the day, but I had done them earlier because I had some free time. uh, had an opening, something had canceled, and I did it then. So when it came time to go to bed, I didn't have this extra work to do, so I was able to just go to bed. And I did not have the nap that I wanted to have yesterday after the show because it was snowing and it was supposed to snow for the rest of the day. So I figured I would do the first pass so I wouldn't have a ton of snow to do once it all stopped. And well, that kind of took up the nap time. So but on the upside, I did to go to bed. I think by 10 past 10, I was in bed, which is way earlier than I usually am. And I woke up originally at 5:30 this morning and was going to get up and to do the show, but I was still sleepy. And and then I slept right through. So right through the last possible minute where the alarm rang. So yeah, uh, probably the best night of sleep I've gotten in maybe 2 years, easily. So, I'm the bags under the eyes are very small today, and, I am, peppy and I feel rested. It's amazing how well your body feels when you feel rested rather than starting, with your eyes burning or a headache or something because you didn't sleep enough. It's a good feeling. I could really get used to this. Oh, man, and, you guys are, already chatting. Yeah, Kids and Cub, that, Board of Peace thing is, turning out to be, quite a mess, isn't it? Oh, man. Yeah, that yeah, that thing is just a hot mess. I believe that, France has made it very clear that, they will not be participating, um, and, yeah, and it looks like Canada is probably now looking at pulling back. And it's kind of one of these weird things because clearly this is a push by Trump to create a grifting fund for himself. I don't know how many nations he's invited. At one point, I heard it was up to 60, but I don't know if that's true. But 60 nations, and hey, if you all just put $1 billion into the pot at the beginning, and if you put more, hey, you get a lifetime seat. The way that I'm getting to understand this. And this whole thing will be chaired by me, Donald Trump. And by the way, I'll control all the money. And when I step down, I will choose the successor. And yeah, this is what we're going to use instead of the United Nations to try to uh, make the world make the world great again. Yeah, yeah. I'm guessing as he's doing the talk that he's doing to Greenland, and as we're hearing that, well, peace is the thing for him that is kind of, oh, well, very quid pro quo, I guess. But we knew that from um, his first term, when he was calling Ukraine, and that famous line, "But I need you to do us a favor, though." Remember that? Yeah, yeah. We'll provide you with all of that, but you need to do us a favor, though. It would seem. It would seem here. This is based from Thomson Reuters that Donald Trump, the president of peace, allegedly, who invaded Venezuela and decapitated the leadership there and seized, captured, kidnapped. Again, use the word that you want there. Uh, the person who believed that he was the leader of the country. Lots of arguments about that and about the legitimacy of that. And his wife. According to Thomson Reuters, US President Donald Trump has linked his drive to take control of Greenland to his failure to win the Nobel Peace Prize, saying in a message to Norway's Prime Minister that he'll no longer think purely of peace as the row over the island threatens to reignite a trade war with Europe. In a text message on Sunday to Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre, and we would have thought that this was made up, but obviously it was confirmed. Trump said, quote, considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus in all caps, of course, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace, although will always be predominant, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America. Okay. This here, uh, number one, the country of Norway does not give the Nobel Peace Prize. It is a board or an organization that happens to have its headquarters somewhere in Norway. He did not stop 8 wars plus. But here's the thing, right? I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace because I didn't get the award. Okay, two things about the Nobel Peace Prize. One, the number one way to never get a Nobel Peace Prize is to openly campaign for a Nobel Peace Prize. Number two, if you no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace because for the 6 or 7 months that you actively campaigned for Nobel Peace Prize, claiming you stopped wars that you did not stop, some of them you even had no involvement with whatsoever, um, and then you don't get the prize, and then you think, well, I didn't get the prize, so I don't need to think purely of peace, where you're just confirming that it was right that they did not give you the prize because you do not uh, get the Nobel Peace Prize for being uh, the person who best openly campaigned to get it during a single year. And if your commitment to peace is only such that you would get the prize, then you're not really committed to peace. You're committed to winning a prize or an accolade. So there's probably no hope that once you would be awarded it, that you were to have a commitment to peace, right? A person that says, now, given that you didn't give me the award, I no longer have to think purely of peace, is the type of person that says, well, now that I have the award, I no longer have to think purely of peace, right? Norway's government released the message on Monday. Støre said had sent an initial message with Finnish President Alexander Stubb calling for de-escalation of tensions, eliciting a response from Trump less than half an hour later. The Norwegian Nobel Committee annoyed Trump by awarding the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize not to him, but to Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado. Trump didn't even make the short list. In his message, Trump also repeated, so I mean, he shouldn't have been surprised that he didn't get the message. He didn't get it. He didn't even make the short list. In his message, Trump also repeated his accusation that Denmark cannot protect Greenland from Russia or China. Quote, why do they have a right of ownership anyway, he wrote. The world is not secure unless we have complete and total control of Greenland. Why do you have a right of ownership, Trump? Anyway, they have a right of ownership because, well, there's a whole bunch of stuff that happened historically that established that right. You just want it for psychological reasons. Why would I invest in something I don't own? You're dumb. Separately, in an interview with NBC News, Trump declined to say whether he would use force to seize Greenland, but did reiterate his threat to hit European countries with new tariffs if a deal is not reached. Trump has intensified his push to wrest sovereignty over the autonomous territory from fellow NATO member Denmark, prompting the European Union to weigh hitting back with its own measures. They have a measure that's called the bazooka, which I think would be a coordinated 25% counter tariff. And they are very seriously considering unleashing it. The dispute, and let's be honest, kits and cubs, as a beaver that lives in a middle power country that needs other middle power countries to stand with them in order to make a common front at times, there's nothing like the words joint collaboration or coordinated action that makes my little beaver heart happy. Yeah. The dispute threatens to upend the NATO alliance that has underpinned Western security for decades, which was already under strain over the war in Ukraine, and Trump's refusal to protect allies unless they increase defense spending. Trump's threat has rattled European industry and sent shockwaves through financial markets. Investors fear a return to the volatility of the 2025 trade war, which only eased when the sides reached tariff deals in the middle of the year. Trump said tariffs of 10% would go into effect on February 1st on EU members Denmark, Sweden, France, Germany, the Netherlands, and Finland, along with Britain and Norway, until the US is allowed to buy Greenland, home to only 57,000 people. They would rise to 25% on June 1st. Quote, we are living in 2026. You can trade with people, but you don't trade people, Denmark's Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen said during a visit to London on Monday. Ooh, that's a statement. You can trade with people, but you don't trade people. Rasmussen said it was time for the European Union and NATO to unite so that a solution can be worked out with the Americans. Rasmussen said he was, quote, surprised the issue had come up yet again, and that he and Trump had discussed Greenland years ago when he was Danish Prime Minister through 2019. In a post on Facebook, Greenland's Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen said the territory should be allowed to decide its own fate. Quote, we will not let ourselves be pressured. We stand firm on dialogue and respect and on international law, he said. Denmark's military told Reuters that Danish soldiers would land in Kangerlussuaq in the western Greenland on Monday as part of the Arctic Endurance military exercise. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer at an emergency news conference on Monday in London said he would use, quote, the full strength of government to try to put a halt to the pressure from Washington. He said he would draw upon the strength of the US-UK relationship. Is there one? Really? Is there one? For a, quote, calm discussion. Is that possible? Really? Is it? On how to strengthen the NATO presence. Asked if he thought Trump was genuinely considering military action with respect to Greenland, Starmer said, quote, I don't actually. I think that this can be resolved and should be resolved through calm discussion. The second Trump administration's aggressive statements have caused confusion and consternation as a 1951 agreement between the US and Denmark gives Washington the right to move around freely and construct military bases in Greenland as long as Denmark and Greenland are notified. While Trump's assertion that he stopped several world wars last year is contentious, it is also true that the deadline for nominees for the most recent Peace Prize was January 31st, 2025, less than 2 weeks into Trump's second term as president. Norway's Støre amended his schedule, announcing he would attend the World Economic Forum in Davos on Wednesday and Thursday, overlapping with Trump's planned appearance in Switzerland. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said he too would try to meet Trump on Wednesday, adding that a trade dispute was not wanted. Quote, but if we are confronted with tariffs that we consider unreasonable, then we are capable of responding, Merz said. Asked by reporters on Monday what he planned to say to European leaders in Davos about his Greenland plan, Trump said, quote, I don't think they're going to push back too much. Look, we have to have it. They have to have this done. They can't protect it. Denmark, they're wonderful people. And I know the leaders, and they're very good people, but they don't even go there. Of course, the United States could obviously protect Greenland more with its zero icebreakers. Or one. They've got one coming from Finland soon. A lot of people have been suggesting that maybe Canada should offer to buy that icebreaker from Finland because why would Finland want to sell an icebreaker to a country that is threatening to use it to invade a NATO ally? Keep your eyes peeled to see if maybe something like that could happen. But the United States is in no position either. They don't have the equipment needed. Separately, European Union leaders will convene in Brussels on Thursday for an emergency summit. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said it would, quote, be very unwise for European governments to retaliate. Quote, I think it's a complete canard that the president will be doing this because of the Nobel Prize. The president is looking at Greenland as a strategic asset for the United States, he told reporters in Davos. Greenland is strategically important because as climate change causes the ice to melt, it opens up the possibility of shorter trade routes to Asia. That could also make it easier to extract and transport untapped deposits of critical minerals. One of the worries is Russia does have the icebreakers. They've got some that are allegedly the size of 2 football fields, and they just like destroys all the ice in front. Whatever Northeast Passage they have in Russia, that they're already operating within their waters. They have stuff going and they have the deep water ports and all of that. Here in Canada, we haven't even started really building one. We've been talking about for about 40 years about building a deep water port somewhere in the north, but we haven't actually done it yet. So uh, that's one of the concerns for us in the sense that the United States, if they're saying this about Greenland, they might be saying this about us too soon with regard to our north, because we haven't done the work. When um, let's see, what do we have here? When asked on Monday to comment on Trump's remarks about the alleged Russian threat, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said there has been a lot of, quote, disturbing information lately, but that the government would not comment on the alleged Russian designs on Greenland. Its importance for security, which Trump has asserted, has been debated. Russia's foreign ministry last week said that it was unacceptable for the West to keep claiming that Russia and China were a threat to Greenland. In Beijing, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiankun said the Chinese government was urging the U.S. to, quote, stop using the so called threat from China as a pretext to pursue its own selfish interests. Ouch. In Washington, several members of Trump's Republican Party have expressed concerns with the White House's aggressive posture on Greenland, but the options to put a check on the president are limited. Senator Mitch McConnell warned last week that an attempt to seize Greenland would, quote, shatter the trust of allies and be a disastrous foreign policy decision that would tarnish Trump's legacy. And if you look at our socials, when that came out, I put out a tweet that said, mark your calendars because we won't say this often. We agree with Mitch McConnell. It happened at least once in our lifetime. While the Trump administration have made common cause with the right-wing nationalist parties of Europe, those of Germany and France have criticized the U.S. president over the Greenland issue. Jordan Bardella, president of Marine Le Pen's far-right National Rally Party in France, posted on social media that the EU should suspend last year's tariff deal with the U.S., describing Trump's threats as, quote, commercial blackmail. Wow. So even some of the right-wing parties in Europe are starting to distance themselves from Trump. They loved playing the Trump thing. Oh, they loved it a lot uh, when they could build upon that for what they were doing in their how would you put it, in their own spheres. But now that Trump wants to sort of make his way into their sphere instead, they have a different take. Interesting how they have a different take all of a sudden. Um, Also, in the message uh, to Norway, um, there was a bit in there because when I mentioned Ukraine and sort of the uh, quid pro quo, there was a line in there that had something to do with we've done for NATO, so now they must do for us. Wording of that sort. Here, according to the New York Times, they actually have the texts. So why not? Let's have a little story time with Mr. Beaver. Do, 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 do. Okay, kits and cubs. Text message from Mr. Stora to Mr. Trump on Sunday, January 18th, 3:48 p.m. Dear Mr. President, dear Donald, on the contact across the Atlantic on Greenland, Gaza, Ukraine, and your tariff announcement yesterday, you know our position on these issues, but we believe we should all work to take this down and de escalate. So much is happening around us where we need to stand together. We are proposing a call with you later today, with both of us or separately. Give us a hint of what you prefer. Best, Alex and Jonas. Text message from Mr. Trump to Mr. Storer on Sunday, January 18th at 4:15 p.m., 27 minutes later. Dear Jonas, considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped at 8 war plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace, although it will always be predominant, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America. Denmark cannot protect that land from Russia or China, and why do they have a right of ownership anyway? There are no written documents. It's only that a boat landed there 300 years ago. Sorry, it's only that a boat landed there hundreds of years ago, but we had boats landing there also. Uh, okay, and also, how do you think America was discovered? A boat kind of landed there, dude. Um, I have done more for NATO than any other person since its founding, and now NATO should do something for the United States. NATO did do something for the United States. Uh, Diaper Donald. The United States is the only country in NATO who has ever invoked Article 5. Donald. The world is not secure unless we have complete and total control of Greenland. Thank you, President DJT. And that's the end of Storytime with Mr. Beaver. Do, 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 do. Yes, I have done more for NATO than any other person since its founding, and now NATO should do something for the United States. And again, let's remember that Donald Trump is the personal embodiment of l'État, c'est moi. So when Donald Trump says now NATO needs to do something for the United States, what Donald Trump really means is NATO needs to do something for me. Because Trump believes he is the United States. Whenever Trump keeps on saying, this is going to be very bad for America, he always means it's going to be very bad for me. Oh my God. Wow. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? So yeah, Macron uh, from France, obviously not down with that at all. Trump apparently shared texts that were sent by Macron and the NATO Secretary General. In a Truth Social post titled Note from President Emmanuel Macron of France, Trump shared a screenshot of a text that read, "My friend, really in line on Syria. We can do great things in Iran. I do not understand what you are doing on Greenland." In the message, Macron offered to set up a G7 meeting in Paris after the Davos summit and wrote, quote, "I can invite the Ukrainians, the Danish, the Syrians, and the Russians in the margins." Élysée Palace has yet to confirm on the veracity of the message, but an unnamed source close to Macron confirmed to CNN that it was sent by the French president. It is unclear why Trump has chosen to share the private text message on social media, but it comes after Macron has criticized Trump's Greenland stance and labeled his new tariff threats over it, quote, "unacceptable." Trump has also shared private message purportedly from Rutte, that's the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, praising Trump's accomplishments in Syria and promising to use his media engagements at Davos to highlight his work in Gaza and Ukraine. Rutte ended the message saying, quote, "He is committed to finding a way forward on Greenland without any further context." That does not sound reassuring. Really weird. Commenting on reports about the letter he sent to Norwegian Prime Minister in which Trump linked his recent aggressive stance on taking over Greenland to his not winning the Nobel Peace Prize, Trump told reporters he doesn't, quote, "care about the Nobel Prize." I don't care about the Nobel Prize. I'm just prepared to invade Greenland because I didn't get it, but I don't care about it. Then the president then added, "First of all, a very fine woman felt that I deserved it, and he really wanted me to have the Nobel Prize, and I appreciated that," he added. So now Maria Corina Machado is not someone who doesn't have the trust of her people. She's a very fine woman. This was in reference to Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado's decision to present him with her 2025 Nobel Peace Prize medal last week, even though the award is not transferable. Trump then doubled down on his stance that Denmark is incapable of protecting Greenland and questioned their sovereignty over the territory once again. Yeah. So there you go. They can't protect it, Denmark, and you know because the boat went there 500 years ago and then left. That doesn't give you title to the property, so we'll be talking about it with various people. Okay. The president appeared to have doubled down on his intent to take control of Greenland as he shared what appeared to be an AI-generated image of himself planting an American flag in the Arctic territory with Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio standing alongside an image of him sitting in the Oval Office addressing top leaders from Europe, along with a map of the hemisphere showing all of Canada, Greenland, and Venezuela as parts of U.S. territory. So just because he hasn't been, the name of our country hasn't been crossing his lips for the last little bit, doesn't mean that he's stopped wanting to acquire us as well. Separate post on True Social, Trump bashed another key American ally, the UK, over its decision to transfer the sovereignty of Diego Garcia, an island in the Indian Ocean that houses a British American military base, to Mauritius. The president wrote, "Shockingly, our brilliant NATO ally, the United Kingdom, is currently planning to give away the island of Diego Garcia to the site of a vital U.S. military base to Mauritius, to do so for no reason whatsoever," in all caps. Trump said China and Russia have noticed this act of total weakness. These are international powers who only recognize strength, in all caps. Trump then added, "The UK giving away extremely important land is an act of great stupidity," in all caps, and is another way very is another in a very long line of national security reasons why Greenland has to be acquired. Denmark and its European allies have to do the right thing, also in all caps. Last year, the UK signed an agreement to transfer the Chagos archipelago Garcia to Mauritius, recognizing its longtime claim. The agreement, however, included a 99-year lease allowing UK to maintain control of the military base on Diego Garcia itself. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. It's a mess. It's a mess. Wow. Yeah. So yeah, Macron doesn't understand what Trump is doing. Macron, basically saying no amount of intimidation will change EU nations' course on Greenland. So we're at a standoff here. We are definitely at a standoff here. Trump says that there's no going back on Greenland. So basically, a lot of people puffing their chests. But yeah, not, how would you put it? Not the most rational discussion being taken place here. Let's try and have a rational discussion. The other side is not interested in rationality in whatever form it could potentially exist anywhere. So yeah, that's a problem. The other thing that we mentioned with regard to this is the use of the bazooka itself that Europe said use. The EU chief is promising an unflinching response to new tariffs. And the bazooka was first, I think, mentioned by Swedish member of European Parliament Karin Karlsbro, according to Shinya Goodyear of CBC Radio. When it comes to dealing with US President Donald Trump, actions speak louder than words, says European lawmaker Karin Karlsbro. Trump is currently facing off with European leaders who oppose his repeated threats to seize control of Greenland and his refusal to rule out doing so by force. The people of Greenland, which is an autonomous territory of Denmark, overwhelmingly oppose a U.S. takeover. Denmark, a longtime U.S. ally and a fellow member of the military alliance NATO, has repeatedly rebuked Trump's overtures. And as you remember, the leader of Greenland basically said, right here, right now, if you ask me if we have to choose between the United States and Denmark, we choose Denmark every time, all the time, right? In response to Trump's trade tariff threats, the EU is deliberating retaliatory tariffs against the US or employing its anti-coercion instrument, the ACI, colloquially known as the trade bazooka. The ACI would limit access to public tenders, investments, or banking activity, or restrict trade and services, including digital services. EU members are divided about whether to bust out the so-called bazooka, but Karlsbro, a Swedish member of the European Parliament, says it's time to take off the kid gloves. Here's part of our conversation with As It Happens with Neil Kuxall. Email will not be blackmailed, as how Denmark's prime minister put it. Is blackmail the word you would use to describe what's happening with Trump and these tariffs? Yes, I think that's a good word to use in this case, because what we see and what we hear from the White House is something really, really extraordinary. And this language, what we hear, the threats should not take place between allies. You've used the phrase, and others have as well, trade bazooka. It is an anti-coercion instrument that you have at your disposal, but it's quite extraordinary as well. Explain for our listeners what you mean when you say trade bazooka. It's time to speak the language that President Trump understands. Deterrence must be credible, visible, and applicable not only to the situation concerning Greenland, but to all forms of coercion from the United States. So it's time to use the so-called bazooka. This means that if one EU country is exposed to a serious economic threat, it should be considered an attack on the Union as a whole. The EU can then respond jointly with the toughest measures, which could involve tariffs on products or on the service sector that is quite important to the US or targeting US investments. The anti corrosion instrument can be compared to NATO's Article 5, one for all and all for one. Hmm. But we're hearing from Hungary's president, of course, Viktor Orban, and the Czech prime minister, of course, Andrej Babiš, as well as both of them not exactly showing full support in terms of Greenland. So do you think consensus within the EU is actually possible? Quote, the support for Greenland for Denmark has a very, very strong support, not only in the European Union, but also from our partners from all around the world. So I'm sure that the European Union will and can react properly. My guess is that answer is a no to that consensus within the EU is possible. So yeah, and then of course, the interview continues on. I won't read all of it through here, but that gives you a general idea of the taste. Uh, it was asked, however, our CBC New colleagues and others are reporting that Prime Minister Mark Carney is considering sending soldiers to Greenland. Is that something that you would support, that the EU would like to see? Quote, it's up to Denmark and Greenland, of course. It's a question for them, basically. But from my point of view, from our point of view, if we can cooperate and try to have a common approach to this, we will stay stronger. Okay. The bazooka tool apparently was initially created to be prepared if Europe would have to respond to something that China might do. So it's kind of interesting that they're talking about using it for the United States. Uh, with regard to the fact that he's taking a stand against Greenland because of the fact he was not awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, she said, I mean, I can't find the words for such a ridiculous thing. That's pretty much how it's deterred. In response to France in particular, not wanting to negotiate on Greenland, um, Trump has threatened 200% tariffs on French wine. So there's the 10% going to 25% tariff for opposing Greenland. And then apparently, yeah, 200% tariffs on French wine. He's threatening now. The 200% tariffs on the wine is not to do with Greenland, however. It's if France declines to join the Gaza Board of Peace. So, hey, everybody, here's my Board of Peace. Send me $1 billion and you get to sit on it. And we'll use that to try and to sabotage the fact that the UN exists. It won't be a United Nations, it will be a Trump Nations Board of Peace. And if you don't join, well, then we'll slap your wine with 200% tariffs. According to Nandita Bose and Bo Erickson of Reuters. U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to hit French wines and champagnes with 200% tariffs in an apparent effort to cajole French President Emmanuel Macron into joining his Border Peace initiative aimed at resolving global conflicts. Trump's initiative, which would start by addressing Gaza and then expand to deal with other conflicts, raises questions about the role of the United Nations, and a source close to Macron said the French president intended to decline the invitation to join. When asked about Macron's stance, Trump said, did he say that? Well, nobody wants him because he will be out of office very soon. You extended the invitation to him. He's saying no. Because he's saying no, you're threatening to put 200% tariffs. Please, please, please join, or else I will have to tariff you. And then, well, nobody wants him because he will be out of office very soon. Donald Trump, please have a little self-esteem. You should not refer to yourself as nobody. Nobody wants him. Seems like you want him real bad. Again, kind of makes Prime Minister Mark Carney's position as to saying, this is something that we'll consider and all that kind of stuff, but not saying a yes or a no, kind of smart. Because now we're learning what happens to people who say no. Aren't we? Boy. Macron is due in Davos for the day on Tuesday before a scheduled return to Paris in the evening. Élysée aides have said there are no plans to extend his stay to Wednesday when Trump arrives in the Swiss mountain resort time. So Macron is going on Tuesday and leaving before Trump even arrives. He has no time for him. In another shot at the French leader, Trump published a private message from Macron in which he said he did not understand Trump's actions over Greenland. France holds an election to replace Macron in 2027. Wines and spirits exported to the United States from the European Union currently face a 15% tariff, a rate the French have been lobbying hard to reduce to zero since Trump and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen agreed a US EU trade deal in Scotland last summer. The United States is the largest market for French wine and spirits, with shipments at 3.8 billion euros in 2024. Quote, the fact we're getting more threats is going to make the industry harder to invest in. It's going to make it harder for companies to make decisions for their own investments, said Laurence Wyatt, head of the European Beverages Research at Barclays. They will have to be more reserved, keep a bit of cash back, not invest, because they need to be able to weather the storms as and when they come. Shares in luxury conglomerate LVMH, which owns a major champagne producers, including Moet and Chandon, were down 2% in early trading. These declarations by the President of the United States must be taken seriously, but with composure, Gabriel Picard, chairman of the French Wine and Spirits Export Lobby, FEVS, said in a statement. The issue must be handled at the European level in a united and coordinated way, the association said. France's wine and spirits industry suffered a 20 to 25% hit to its U.S. business in the second half of last year after previous tariff measures, Picard told Reuters on Monday before the latest threat. A Macron aide said the Élysée took note of Trump's remarks and stressed that tariff threats to influence a third party's foreign policy were unacceptable. Europeans are weighing their own 93 billion euro tariff riposte and even the use of the bloc's anti-coercion instrument to retaliate against a separate threat of tariff hikes against a group of European states over Greenland. It's brutal, it's designed to break us, it's a tool for blackmail. All of this is outrageous, French Foreign Minister Annie Genevard told news channel TF1. We have the tools. Europeans must take responsibility. We cannot allow such an escalation. Trump has threatened a 200% tariff on wine or other alcoholic beverages included from the EU before, including last year in March as a transatlantic trade tension escalated. Governments have reacted cautiously to Trump's Board of Peace invitation, a plan that diplomats said could harm the work of the United Nations. A draft charter sent to about 60 countries by the U.S. administration calls for members to contribute $1 billion in cash if they want their membership to last more than 3 years, according to the document seen by Reuters. Looks like that's not going to be happening. And on that as well, according to the Globe and Mail, this is from about 2 hours ago on the Globe and Mail, because yesterday it was that we were still mulling it. But according to Stephen Chase, Canada will not be paying a reported US $1 billion membership fee to participate in Donald Trump's Board of Peace. Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne said Tuesday in comments that suggest Ottawa is still weighing whether to join. Mr. Champagne, speaking to reporters on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos, would not say whether the fact that Mr. Trump has invited Russian President Vladimir Putin to join the Board of Peace would affect Canada's position. Prime Minister Mark Carney on Sunday said he had agreed in principle to accept a Trump invitation to sit on the board, but Mr. Champagne told reporters the final decision on Canada's membership has yet to be made. I accept in principle. Clever wording. As you know, we're still early days in what's going to be the terms of reference of that board and how it's going to operate, the finance minister said. The prime minister will have to make the final decision when all the facts are known and all the details have been hammered out, so we can delay that decision as far back as possible. So the prime minister didn't say yes, didn't say no. So he's not inviting a 200% tariff on something. He says, yes, in principle. And when I see everything about the documents and how this is supposed to work and operated, I will give you my final decision. Of course, with other countries saying no and all that kind of stuff, I'm going to guess that these final documents never actually get prepared and distributed, and that this idea dies a slow and painful death somewhere in obscurity. And the prime minister then, by saying yes in principle rather than no, or rather than a yes, gets through this without a scar. Again, picking your words very carefully. Sometimes knowing that other people will take a firmer stand allows you to slide through without drawing too much attention to yourself. And at this moment, again, while it would be nice and it would be cathartic for us to do the thing that we normally do, stand up on our soapbox on the world stage and somewhat lecture. We do that every now and then. Um, this strategy of keeping your head down and buying as much time as possible in order to shore up whatever it is you need to shore up to be ready for the storm that is indeed going to hit, because there's no doubt if Trump is still there, he's going to hit us with something at some point. So, to prepare and shore up for that without drawing too much attention to oneself if one doesn't need to, and without seeking the ire, without making concessions, but with clever word choices and clever positioning. Yes, in principle. Well, this is something I would consider. Uh, yeah, let's take that under advisement. And when I see more information, I'll be able to tell you more what I think about these types of conversations. Again, a lot of kicking the can down the road type thing, buying time, stalling. Um, we need every second. We need absolutely every second we can get. And then if we get an extra second, then we need to be using that time very effectively. So I see what the prime minister is doing here. Yes, in principle, had to be the only acceptable answer, because you can't say yes to something, the documents of which you have not seen yet. And if you say no, you know how that's going to end out. Say, especially if the president turns around and says, "Hey, I want you to be a part of my board of peace." And with the president in his mind, when he's making that offer, he's thinking that he's being super generous and magnanimous and whatnot, until you find out that the invitation went out to 60 other people and you're not that special. It's just a way to try to get $60 billion in a bank account somewhere that he can control for his own individual purposes. Oh, I got $60 billion to play with. This country is doing this thing I don't like. Okay, Board of Peace, approve me to go into that country and get what I want. It's basically what this mechanism is. It's basically an attack fund so that Trump can go into any country that does something he doesn't like and drop a bomb on them. This idea is probably not going to go very far in any way, shape, or form. So, yeah, uh, it seems that our answer is still yes, in principle, until we see all those documents. But fuck no, we're not going to pay $1 billion to join, however. And you know what? If a lot of countries say, yeah, we would love to participate in the Board of Peace, but none of us are going to pay that $1 billion to sit on the board, then Trump, like it was the case for the Nobel Prize, well, I don't really want it anymore. Or Macron sitting on his Board of Peace, well, nobody wants him anyway. We'll probably end up being that. "Oh, the Board of Peace was just a dumb idea anyway. I didn't really want to do it. I just thought it would be better." Oh my god, what a loser this guy is. The the problem is that he's a loser with nukes and a military that's able to fight a war on two fronts. Of course, we are learning now also when it comes to that did anybody ever have on their bingo card when the United States said that they wanted to be able to fight on war on both fronts? We always thought that they meant in case they're attacking, they're in war with one country and another country attacks them. I don't think anybody ever thought that the two fronts is in case they have to fight a war against their own people, and they need another military in order to stop anyone from coming to the aid of their own people. Because that's what it looks like is going on now. Just saying. All right. Let's go into the chats here and see if we have anything from the kits. We have Kit Brenda here saying Trump is posting images of the American flag over Greenland and Canada. Indeed, just mentioned that in an article here. Um, Kit Grace, then another picture of him and Vance planting U.S. flag on Greenland, also mentioned in our articles today that we read. Kit Bucky here. As a former diplomat, I am in despair over Greenland thing dismantling the international rules-based order, but the ice thuggery leaves me sputtering in rage. I have a feeling that you are far from the only one who is experiencing that, Kit Bucky. Um, EU chief warns there's no going back after Trump's Greenland threats. So there you go. Yeah, Grace saying USMCA Kuzma might be dead then. Uh, probably, probably. Kid Grace, Carney better not be on that stupid Trump board. Canadians will be pissed. I certainly will be. Yeah, like I said, I have a feeling that that board will never see the light of day eventually. Kit Linda, Carney has been operating on the assumption that Kuzma is dead for quite a while now. So have we here on this show. Trump keeps on saying Trump doesn't want a deal. He wants the drama. So, Kid Bucky, the Board of Peace is a cabal of authoritarians. Yikes. But not untrue. Not untrue, especially when you say, let's invite Putin and Erdogan in. Really? Should we? LCC. Really? Should we? Maybe? I'm not sure. Wow. Kit Give Time Rest. That's a new name for us here. Welcome to the Beaver Lodge. If you are new here, says that Ursula von der Leyen's address is what alerted me more. So many countries were included in her address, but Canada was not mentioned. Yeah, she's only entitled to speak for the EU, so she probably wouldn't mention us unless we specifically said we're okay with that. I would assume here. Uh, let's see, what else do we have here? According to Kid Uncover the News, German politician Jürgen Hart just proposed the impossible: boycott the 2026 World Cup to bring Trump to his senses on Greenland. Wow. Okay. So yeah, you have Kit Grace going Russia jumping for joy over Greenland controversy. Probably. But with Kit Saucy reminding us Russia needs to shut up because they have a lot of unnatural parts of their country too. Yeah, you have a point here. Kit Linda notes the complete disrespect of addressing his letter to Jonas instead of Prime Minister. Hmm. Yeah, in a way, I'm going to guess at that level, um, you know, they probably address each other more by first name than by titles. But in written communication, you should maintain the formality. Indeed, I agree with that there. Let's see, who else do we have? Kid Bucky, the protocol is usually the letter is printed with Dear Prime Minister, which he will then cross out and handwrite to Jonas where he signs. Exactly. I've seen that a lot. The protocol letter usually has the honorific, and if the person sending it has more of a personal relationship, they will cross it out and then, use a less formal greeting at that point. And I've seen that not only in the diplomatic world, but even just as a public servant, there's many letters that I have written with the honorifics and sent up to my supervisors, whatnot, and they've crossed it out, and if they've got a well-established relationship with the person in charge. But that is indeed a protocol there, that you do it formally and then allow an alteration if people are a little more familiar. According to Grace, Trump also came down on Starmer, calling him stupid about the Chagas Island, yet Trump approved it last year. Yeah, well, yeah. Trump also thought that Kuzma was the best deal ever signed until he didn't, right? So, yeah. And then Give Time Rest announcing here, I will emphasize that his note was released within hours of the Mercosur agreement announcement. Yes, which is a big deal as well. And we are also trying to make an agreement with Mercosur as well. But according to the Associated Press here, Nayara Bachki and Isabel Debre. The European Union and the Mercosur bloc of South American countries formally signed a long sought free trade agreement on Saturday, strengthening commercial ties in the face of rising protectionism and trade tensions around the world. The signing ceremony in Paraguay's capital, Asunción, caps more than a quarter century of torturous negotiations and marks a major geopolitical victory for the EU in an age of American tariffs and surging Chinese exports, expanding the bloc's foothold in a resource-rich region increasingly contested by Washington and Beijing. It also sends a message that South America is keeping a range of trade and diplomatic relationships, even as US President Donald Trump makes an aggressive push for geopolitical dominance of the Western Hemisphere. The agreement could still face hurdles in the EU Parliament, which must ratify it before it can take effect. Ratification is considered all but guaranteed in South America, where the agreement has broad support. Mercosur consists of the region's two biggest economies, Argentina and Brazil, as well as Paraguay and Uruguay. Bolivia, the bloc's newest member, is not included in the trade deal but can join in the coming years, and Venezuela has been suspended from the bloc and isn't included in the agreement. Supported by South America's cattle raising countries and European industrial interests, the accord will gradually eliminate more than 90% of tariffs on goods ranging from Argentine beef to German cars, creating one of the world's largest free trade zones and making shopping cheaper for more than 700 million consumers. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who heads the EU's executive branch, portrayed the deal as a bulwark against the disruptive policies of the Trump administration. Quote, it reflects a clear and deliberate choice. We choose fair trade over tariffs. We choose a productive long-term partnership over isolation, von der Leyen declared in a veiled rebuke of Trump at the ceremony, which got underway as Trump announced 10% tariffs on 8 European nations over their opposition to American control of Greenland. Quote, we will join forces like never before because we believe that this is the best way to make our people and our countries prosper, she added. The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, a longtime advocate of the trade deal, hailed it as a victory for global cooperation. Quote, at a time when unilateralism isolates markets and protectionism inhibits global growth, two regions that share democratic values and a commitment to multilateralism choose a different path, Lula posted on Twitter. But Lula skipped the signing ceremony, signaling simmering tensions between the trading blocs. Brazil, which held the rotating presidency of Mercosur last year, was gearing up to host the signing ceremony last month when European countries called it off, demanding more concessions for farmers, scared of a surge in cheap agricultural imports. Robbed of the spotlight, Lula was outraged at what was widely seen in South America as the latest example of EU's overbearing demands. One of the main reasons the deal took so long to clinch was Brussels' demand for controls on South American agricultural processes, from deforestation regulation to rules on plastic packaging, as European farmers complained they couldn't compete if their South American counterparts were held to lower standards. The EU's maximalist wish lists of demands from developing economies willing to sign free trade agreements are often perceived as patronizing, said Agathe Desmarais, a senior policy fellow with the European Council on Foreign Relations. After the accord incorporated environmental regulations, strict quotas on farm imports like beef and sugar, and staggered timelines for tariff reductions, the EU sweetened the deal further for its farmers with a promise of hefty subsidies that pushed agricultural powerhouse Italy across the line earlier this month. But even as the ink dried on Saturday, powerful lobbies in Europe were still hoping to prevent the agreement from clearing its main final hurdle, ratification by the European Parliament. France remains opposed to the accord, with President Emmanuel Macron worrying that farmers' frustration with the EU could drive more voters to the country's far right in the 2027 presidential election. In an interview, EU Trade Commissioner Maroš Stefčovič said he'd start lobbying Monday to get European Parliament members on board with the deal in hopes of seeing it passed in the first half of this year. We have very intense communication with, sorry, there's a pop-up that just appeared here. We have very intense communication with all the members on a group level, on an individual level, Stefčovič told the Associated Press, expressing confidence that everyone will do the procedures as quickly as possible so he can benefit from this historic achievement. Stefčovič didn't name Trump, but as the U.S. threatens higher tariffs, the commissioner said the accord sent the message, quote, that if someone prefers and believes in high tariffs and power politics, Mercosur and European countries representing more than 700 million people clearly believe in international law, predictability, certainty, and the removing of trade barriers. The deal is a sign of the bloc's revived relevance after years in which it was embroiled in political spats, undermined by economic crises and constrained by protectionist governments. Perhaps most striking is the enthusiasm of the Argentine president Javier Milei, a radical libertarian and admirer of Trump, who shares the U.S. leader's contempt for global institutions like the United Nations. Milei came to office in late 2023 with nothing but scorn for Mercosur, trashing it as a prison, threatening to withdraw and skipping the 2024 summit. But his enthusiasm for free trade overcame any skepticism for the bloc at Saturday's ceremony. Quote, Argentina understands firsthand that closure and protectionism sheltered by rhetoric rather than results are the greatest causes of economic stagnation, he said before signing. Huh. little bit of daylight between Malay and Trump on this one. So there you go, Kits and Cups, and that is an alliance that we are also looking to join. We mentioned that a while ago that our trade minister Maninder Sidhu was over there and having some initial talks with the group to see if we can do anything along with that as well. All right, back to what some of you guys have had to say here. Um, ta-ta. Apparently, Hungarian leader vetoed EU support of defending Greenland, according to Kit Elaine. That would not surprise me at all. Let's see. What else do we have here? All right. I think that's everything. Uh, Kid Bucky, I think the taunting voice whenever Doug reads Trump's words is appropriate. My word. Thank you for that. Uh, Kit Give Time a Rest, a wonderful display of American arrogance in full display at the presser with Scott Bessent. Absolutely disgusting. And yeah, Bessent, not allegedly supposed to be a very smart man, but not acting like it at all in his public appearances and interventions in front of a microphone. Kit Bucky, the irony of the Trump cabal talking about security risks when they are the biggest threat to the international rule of law. Right? Right? Oh boy. Jeez. Let's see, what else do we have here? All right. So I think that's pretty much everything I've got from the Kits and Cubs here. Kit Bucky again here. Speaking of contempt for sovereignty, UK started on Tuesday and had to defend handing sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. Trump attacked the plan which he had previously supported. Again, what we recently mentioned here on the show. So yeah, lots of pieces all around the world, right? It's amazing that Greenland isn't just about Greenland when you start including the Board of Peace and everything. Greenland isn't just about Greenland when you start adding economic coercion to the mix. So yeah, things are definitely getting hairier. We got Catalina M here saying, we know there's going to be a major hissy fit when we decline to buy any more F-35s. Yep, indeed. Kid Grace, Mark Carney must have patience, nerves of steel, and a willpower not to tell him off. I think my personal theory is that Mark Carney, again, because he understands the bond market and all that kind of stuff, knows where things are going eventually for the United States. So he might just be smiling to himself as the United States insists on running headfirst into a brick wall over and over and over and over again. So that might have a little something to do with it here. And got Scott Bessent here going, everyone take a deep breath. Do not escalate. Do not escalate. President Trump has a strategy here. Hear him out, and then everything will be fine. Yeah, that's what you said about the tariffs all around the world. And then everything wasn't fine. This is the United States being scared. This is the United States basically telling the world again, no, just let us climb all over on top of you and do what we want and don't resist and don't object. Just let us do it. Just let us grab you by the Kit Kat. We're the United States. Other countries just let us do it. Don't retaliate. Don't escalate. Absolutely do not escalate. Don't resist. It'll be much worse for you if you resist. Just let us do it. It's abuser talk. It's abuser talk. Kid Hyper T, I'm excited to see what Carney and Lula will whip up during Carney's visit to Brazil. So am I. So am I. Oh man. Kit Bucky giving us a little information about Canada and negotiating with Mercosur. Says, I see that Canada and Mercosur are resuming negotiations for a trade agreement after putting them on hold for a few years. The negotiations were delayed to ensure proper environmental and social regulation in Mercosur so developed economies can compete. There we go. Thank you for that update because I wasn't sure what the delay was about. All right. So yeah, that's what's going on there. Um, Back home, kits and cubs. Um, we've been talking about EVs because of that deal with China, and of course, Doug Ford claiming that he was left out of the loop and that this was a knee-jerk reaction from Canada, and I can't believe we did this, and oh my God, we're going to bring all these spy cars and blah 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 whatever. Um, right? We have a lazy premier who didn't do any work. And of course, as Merritt Stiles has pointed out, leads to the question, sir, if you are the premier of the largest province of Ontario and the auto sector was so important, where the hell were you when all this was happening that you would be left out of the loop? And I still wonder, because Mark Carney does have a reputation for being the type of person that doesn't suffer fools lightly. Um, Part of me wonders if Doug maybe not being in the loop is a little bit of payback for the ad. That I don't know if that's the case, but Mark Carney is a very strategic person and wouldn't necessarily telegraph his moves or spike the football when he makes them. So it could have been oh, did I forget to call you to let you know we were doing this on the automobiles? Gee, what a shame. It must have slipped my mind like it slipped your mind that I told you not to run those ads. Maybe. Uh, I'm petty, so it would definitely be something I would consider. It certainly also did a good job to throw a grenade in the conservative Canadian conservative movement with the pro Polyev camp and the pro Ford camp now fighting each other. And fighting each other so much, by the way, that it would appear that there is some type of diplomatic effort of some kind, given that Pierre Poilievre has a new campaign manager, right? Jenny Byrne is out, and they brought in the Steve Outhouse guy. And according to Kate McKenna, the Federal Conservative Party is seeking to make amends with some provincial leaders after tensions with both Ontario and Nova Scotia's progressive Conservative premiers played out in public last year, sources say. Of course, now that Doug Ford is poo-pooing on this deal, Ontario got nothing from it. Yeah, okay, maybe Ontario got nothing from it according to you. I wouldn't say that that's the case if we're looking at the long term of this agreement with China. But okay, let's say you said Ontario. So Ontario didn't get anything this time around. Doesn't mean Ontario won't get anything next time around. But right now, Doug Ford, you are making enemies of the Premier of Saskatchewan and probably many Atlantic premiers, including the progressive conservative ones of Nova Scotia and PEI, and maybe now Newfoundland and Labrador too, by saying that it's a terrible thing that they have 0% tariffs on certain seafood products now. But according to this, in December, Pierre Poilievre's new campaign manager, Steve Outhouse, reached out to both Tim Houston and Doug Ford's offices in an effort to turn a page on the fractious period where both premiers were publicly criticizing Poilievre's conservatives. Sources say making these calls was identified as a priority and that Outhouse, who officially started his job on December 1st, was considered a strong potential peacemaker, in part because he has good relationships with people inside both of Houston and Ford's offices. And that may be so for Steve Outhouse, but Pierre Poilievre is a dick, has always been a dick, will probably continue to be a dick, and I have a feeling that whatever Steve Outhouse is doing will at some point be completely sabotaged by the fact that Pierre Poilievre is a dick and cannot resist being a dick. But maybe that's just me. The sources say the call centered on highlighting that Poilievre's team is interested in having a relationship with the provincial parties and they want to do whatever they can to work together. Oh, now he wants to work together. Three provincial and federal sources spoke to CBC News about the outreach effort. CBC News agreed not to name the sources because they're not authorized to speak publicly about internal party matters. Two sources say there's a desire on all sides to move on. In a statement, Outhouse said he believes unifying Conservatives across the country is key to winning the next federal election. As an Atlantic Canadian who has worked on campaigns across the country, I have great respect for all parts of our Conservative voter coalition. Each part has its strengths, and I'm looking forward to working with all parts of the Conservative movement to win the next election, whenever that is, he said. Outhouse, who's from Nova Scotia, will be attending the Provincial Progressive Conservative Annual General Meeting in February and has reached out to other provincial PC or Conservative teams across the country. He has a recent experience running campaigns in Newfoundland and Labrador, Alberta, New Brunswick, and in Conservative MP Leslie Lewis's 2020 and 2022 federal leadership bids. So yeah, it seems that they are trying to mend fences. It says here, since the 2025 election, sources say Poilievre's team has sought to make inroads in repairing relationships. Efforts to speak on Ford's team date back to last May. To speak to Ford's team, sorry. In recent months, Poilievre has publicly supported the Ontario Premier. Earlier this week, he sided with Ford's position that Canada must not drop a 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles. When Ford was facing criticism over running an anti-tariff ad that prompted U.S. President Donald Trump to abruptly end talks, Poilievre defended the Premier, saying Ford was stepping up to fill a leadership void left by the Prime Minister. Well, gee, a lot of good that Pierre Poilievre, along with Stephen Harper, I have to say, world's worst talent scouts. Not particularly good at identifying talent. Not particularly good at picking winners. I'll just say that right there. Poilievre's efforts to shore up friendships also include outreach to former leadership rival Patrick Brown, with whom the Conservative leader met last September. Earlier this week, Poilievre put a spotlight on a Toronto Star op-ed descrying extortion threats in the Peel region, written by Brown. It's unclear whether Poilievre's courting is having any effect. Neither Premier's office has responded to a request for comment. Poilievre will face a leadership review later this month in Calgary at the party's convention. All right. But back to the EVs. There was two segments yesterday on Power and Politics that I found particularly interesting because they present the view of the government of Ontario and the view of the government of Canada, of course, on this, which are very different. So for the government of Ontario, we have Mr. Patterson, who is the person who got chewed out by Ambassador Fuckface at an event a while ago. He's our Ontario trade representative in Washington. And on the government side, we have the parliamentary secretary to the Prime Minister, Cody Bloy, who had gone with Scott Moe to China on the first visit. When things were being negotiated to get us here. Mr. Patterson does give us some important context in this interview because we are looking at the EVs, the 49,000 that will be allowed in, as being just 3% of the auto market. And while that is true, Mr. Patterson does, however, make a very interesting and salient point that we should consider, and that does warrant consideration. This is not just spin. This is actually something that does warrant consideration. Is that even though 49,000 EVs represents only 3% of the auto manufacturing and cars sold in Canada, 49,000 EVs is about 1/3 of all the EVs sold in Canada last year, however. So not a big share of the auto market as a whole, but a very significant share of Canada's EV auto market specifically. And that is something to consider. All right. I'm just going to put it up here and just make sure. I'll just start it at the beginning of the segment, give you the introduction. Why not? So this is the interview with our Ontario trade representative in Washington, D.C., Mr. David Patterson.
Carney is selling his deal to lower tariffs on tens of thousands of Chinese EVs as an opportunity for Canada's auto sector. Speaking in Doha yesterday, Carney said there's an expectation of Chinese investment and partnerships in Canada and that the tech could help prep the sector for the future.
I do know there's interest because we've had direct conversations directly from the Chinese companies. This is an opportunity for Ontario. It's an opportunity for Ontario workers, opportunity for Canada, done in a controlled way with a modest start.
But today, Ontario's premier called it a terrible deal and said China will never manufacture in Canada because it won't be profitable without exports to the U.S.
I don't believe that President Trump will accept any vehicles from China being manufactured here. So to say that we're going to bring assembly here from China is just not accurate whatsoever.
David Patterson is Ontario's representative in Washington, and he joins me now. David Patterson, always good to see you. Thank you for being here, sir.
Hi, David.
The premier is frustrated that he never got a heads up, never got any advance notice on this from Mark Carney. If the Prime Minister had given Doug Ford a heads up, would he have supported the deal? Would it have changed anything here?
I think there's a number of outstanding questions that we're still very worried about. We're extremely worried, and so is the industry in the context of all the antecedent worry around the USMCA, of course. And I think there's three big questions that that we're asking. Really, what is the impact of this for the trade discussions, 232s that never did anything for auto? What are the national security aspects of cars from China linking to the national
just being here with the way they're so computerized and things.
And that's a big issue here in the United States as well. Everything's national security. And then really the most important is, what does it mean for our auto sector? We heard a lot that's only 3% of sales. Doesn't sound so bad, but it's actually about a third of the new electric vehicle market in Canada, and it's sort of seeding that new market, which we've invested billions in to support in Ontario and the federal government, and to turn that over. And even under the current federal EV mandate, with a gift of about $1 billion of credits that would go to these Chinese vehicles to sell to others under that policy, there are all these things that need to be sorted out. So those are the kinds of things you would like to have discussed before, and we're going to obviously raise now. We also have canola in Ontario. We like to work right across Canada. We like to speak with one voice, but we have questions.
Okay, obviously you and I cannot get to the bottom of the national security implications of all of this. That is going to be for other people more specialized on this. But I want to ask you about the impact on the industry here, because moving from a tariff control of Chinese access to the market to quota control of the Chinese access to the market, and as I understand it, about half of these cars are going to be quite cheap, priced at $35,000. How is that a threat to the industry here,
Sure,
based on what we know so far on that?
So these vehicles are made in China at a wage of approximately $5 to $10 per hour. That contrasts to $45 to $55 per hour for our workers in Ontario. And on top of that, all the subsidy of 20 years of advanced work and critical minerals and battery development that comes in China. So that's what allows China to produce a vehicle that is so much cheaper, undercuts your market. And that is a threat to dealers across Canada, to auto companies, and most of all to workers that produce vehicles. And then the other thing too is just really important to understand the economics of manufacturing. You can't make an auto plant pencil at less than 200,000 vehicles a year. Now we're bringing in 50 to 70,000 over the next couple of years. But one of the other questions is, well, are we talking about Chinese vehicle companies setting up in Canada? Will they have access to the American market? It seems unlikely. Just on national security basis, or even the ability to cross the border in one of these vehicles. And unless you could produce a minimum of 2 shifts or 200,000 vehicles per year, you would never invest in an auto plant. Because you don't build cars just for Canada, you build them for North America.
Right.
So there, we're getting a lot of context to add to this discussion here from Mr. Patterson in terms of, if we're talking about the investment that's going to be coming within 3 years, that's part of this agreement, would be to build a full auto plant. You need something that's going to produce at least 200,000 cars that would have at least 2 full shifts. We're learning, again, the size, the share of the EV market that 49,000 represents. So this interview with David Patterson is very informative because it is giving us some contextual details that we need to understand what the possibilities could be in the future, what is possible and what is least possible or less likely, considering what the current situation is and how big the gap is between where we would have to be from importing 49,000 EVs from China made the China way, where people are paid $5 to $10 an hour rather than $45 an hour, versus being able to manufacture 200,000 here, hopefully not only by robotics, with people that would be working with good paying jobs at Canadian good paying union job rates. That changes the dynamic a lot. So Mr. Patterson is very good at laying out what the spread is between the current situation and where we would need to be if, let's say, the agreement was that China would open its own manufacturing plant here to have its cars manufactured here, according, with a combination of how they do it there and how we do it here, I guess, would be but acceptable for this current market. There's a wide spread here. So from what he's saying, it's looking that it might be less likely that a full-fledged plant built by China, operated by Chinese interests, would be the way to go here because, first of all, the sales of EVs are not that high here yet. And because there's a strong possibility, not necessarily, but a strong possibility that those cars would not be able to be for sale in the US market. Of course, nothing stops them from being sale also in the Mexican market. Right? If Canada and New Mexico are going to be doing a whole lot more bilateral trade together by plane and by boat, those cars can be shipped by boat to Mexico, not crossing the US territory whatsoever. So we do have options, right? But it will require a little bit more work. But Mr. Patterson is good at making, like I said, at showing us how much work there would actually have to be to get to that point. Let's get back to him.
On that, this has been the sales pitch from the government, that they hope this is the beginning of what will be a scale-up of Chinese investment and joint ventures. But if their model is to flood markets with low price point goods in EVs and basically everything they make in China, you can't do that and pay North American and Canadian labor standards, meet those conditions. So what is the likelihood of any kind of meaningful Chinese investment happening here, given that reality?
Well, and that was the thinking between Canada and the United States on 100% tariff on EVs, while there is a period of time for the North American market and the workers that support that market to catch up with a competitive product on scale in North America. And so this is letting the more than the nose of the camel in the tent, and a significant nose when it comes to the new vehicle technology market. Now, people may be attracted to the advantage of a lower cost vehicle, and we'll see which companies come in or which companies are allowed to come in, what pricing they would bring in. We don't know these things. But there is a lot of concern, I can tell you, in the conversations I've had this weekend from the auto companies, from the unions, from the auto workers. And I think the most diplomatic way to say it is that we have questions.
Right. Well, what about the Americans, though, in Washington? Because we saw a very muted kind of response. Like Jamieson Greer did say we would regret this, Canada would, not because of U.S. retaliation, but just because of deepening ties with China. And the president kind of said, well, good for Mark Carney. That's what he should be doing. Have you heard anything more ominous than that in the 72 hours since this went public?
Oh, I've heard an awful lot from members of Congress members even close to Jameson Greer around the issues there. Europe is a good model of what happens when China is provided access into the market. We've seen Volkswagen close 2 full manufacturing plants for the first time since the Second World War. And so that has an enormous impact on your markets. Now, Europe is bringing in more Chinese vehicles than is being talked about here. So there is time for us to kind of get our arms around these issues. Let's get back to sort of consulting with each other and seeing where we're able to go forward. But yes, there's concern on all these issues here in the United States. I guess one of the questions seemed to have been hinted by the federal government in a couple of things said on the weekend is there something they know that the president is looking at doing here in the United States as well? Because I don't think that would go over very well here either.
So just as a final point, I mean, I get the concerns, right? And why there's anxiety about this, but China was not going to start taking oil and gas and canola without something in return. And the U.S. is doing what the U.S. is doing, and who knows what they do next. So how do you calibrate this if you're the federal government and you need to do something for the agriculture sector, you want to create that export market for oil and gas and other energy products? How do you do it without some level of give and take? Because this just brings it back to where it was in 2024 in terms of their market access.
Well, that's one way of looking at it, that they brought it back, but it's also with an escalator going forward on these things. There are many sectors, many different issues right across the country. And the idea is let's discuss them together in advance and find ways that are going to be supportive of our workers and our investments in Canada. We're all for diversification of markets. We're doing that ourselves in Ontario.
Right.
We're all for all the sectors across Canada because practically every one of them is big in Ontario. What we're not for is getting ahead of ourselves. And, there was a gather some heads up to Jameson Greer and others in the United States. So there should be. There should also, I think, been with the Premier of Ontario, and we'll get past that. But let's work with our sector and see where this is going to take us.
David Patterson, Ontario's representative in Washington. We appreciate the time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, David.
So there you go, kits and cubs. And again, Mr. Patterson indicating to us that part of the reasons that we were imposing this 100% deal tariff on EVs from China is because, well, they had a 20 or 25-year head start on us with regard to exploring for critical minerals and all that kind of stuff that would be needed in order to make these cars, and that hopefully that we were buying ourselves some time to finally get our acts together on that so that we can start building the infrastructure required to produce them in North America in such a way that we could be somewhat competitive with regard to China, and of course to allow North American-made EVs to gain foothold and appreciation within the North American market among consumers, so that if ever there came a time that there would be EVs from China allowed onto our market, that people would be used to North American brands and would prefer them, or maybe not want to take a risk on another brand. So that is also consideration that was in place. Now, with regard to this, so that's the government of Ontario position. And if you were looking at the chyrons going across the screen, you got Doug Ford saying everyone got something except Ontario. All we got is a massive threat, but that's not true, because Ontario has lumber, and there was a deal on lumber, and Ontario has canola, and there was a deal on canola. So that's not exactly true, and there is something for Ontario in this trade deal with regard to EVs down the road, it would appear. And it would, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister, Cody Blois, who's the second interview on this segment, will have a little bit on that. And it seems, based on what he is saying, that our thought yesterday that it may not be China coming in to build a plant, a BYD plant in Canada to sell BYD cars, but that China might be engaging in some technology transfer or intellectual property sharing in order to help Canadians build EVs more efficiently, or in conjunction or in collaboration. That might be something that is going on. And it would seem that's the impression I got from this discussion with the parliamentary secretary to the Prime Minister, Ms. Cody Blois. So I will put this up here on the screen for you, kits and cubs, and just make sure that you can see it. Yes, it is. All right, let's see what it is that he has to say.
So while the trade agreement will bring relief to Canadian farmers, Ford says it's a terrible deal for auto sector workers in Ontario. Cody Blois is the parliamentary secretary to the Prime Minister. He was on that trip to China. Now he's back in Nova Scotia, and he joins me now. Cody Blois, good to see you, sir. Thanks for your time today.
Good to see you, David.
Doug Ford is not happy with what you came back from China with. He calls the deal terrible, says he got no heads up, and he's mad about Ontario being kind of left out of this. What's your reaction to what the Premier's saying?
Couple things I would want to say to Canadians and obviously to the Premier if he's watching is we were very cognizant in the conversations we were having with the Chinese about the fact that it is a very delicate moment for the auto sector in the country, and that's exactly why we didn't go with a surtax route of having a 30 or 40% surtax with no certainty for the industry. Any Canadian in the country can tell you exactly how many vehicles China will be able to import over the next 3 years with the conditionality that includes investment. And I think that's an important point we'd like to make, which is this gives the certainty in terms of amount of volume, but it's also market access, which is conditioned on driving investment. And that's exactly what the Premier called for.
Right.
In the week leading up. He said, let's see Chinese investment in the country. David, I had the opportunity to actually visit 2 Chinese EV companies when I was in China. There's conversations already starting. It is our job, it is our view that part of this market access is about driving industrial benefit to the supply chain in Canada and working with existing partners in a joint venture format. That's what the Prime Minister views as important. We agree with the Premier about the importance of the auto industry, but we see this not as a major concession, but a very strategic market access. About 3% of the overall market in Canada, and we're already in conversations about investment. So that is the point that has to be.
But what kind of investment, Cody Blois? Because are you talking about a full car manufacturing plant? Are you talking about a battery plant? I mean, what specifically are you talking about? Because investment can mean many, many things.
So there are Chinese OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, who have already put up their hand. I'm not going to name them now, David, for commercial sensitivity, but they have identified themselves as saying they are willing to work within a joint venture format. So this would be a majority Canadian or North American-owned equity play where the company in question would be able to bring elements of their supply chain, but also recognizing that they would have to work within the existing players like the Linamars, like the Magnas that already exist in Ontario, so that we can be able to move forward on that basis.
You're talking car parts, not full cars. Am I understanding you correctly?
It could be both, David. I mean, there's a whole host of opportunities here. I don't want to actually prescribe it as being too narrow, but there are companies that are willing to look at production, auto facilities in terms of assembly and production, and there is Chinese companies that compete in the supply chain that would recognize and support the OEMs from a Chinese perspective that would want to work with Canadian companies to build out the industrial supply chain. So there is a whole host of opportunities. The Prime Minister's view is that this is a strategic, calculated market access entry of about 3% of the Canadian market at this point, with a whole host of certainty. And that's the word that I want to impress upon. This is not a runaway. This is not a open market where we don't know what the overall volume will be. Any Canadian in this country can do the math about the exact market access. And we agree with the Premier. We want to see investment. But I think we would all agree that there's no Chinese investment going to work in a partnership in Canadian industrial benefits in that supply chain if you don't actually have some market access and penetration. We could look back, David, I think this is the last point I'll make on this. We could look back to history, whether it's the Hondas or the Toyotas or the Korean automakers 30 years ago, they didn't have a whole lot of market access. Now I think it's over 70% of the production in this country is tied with Honda and Toyota. So there is a precedent for this where you allow a certain market access, you can build a certain brand, and it can come with it good Canadian jobs. We can work within the Canadian industrial supply chain, use Canadian steel. We think this is actually an opportunity for some invigoration within that market, particularly the EV sector.
Okay.
So there you have Kits and Cubs here. statements by the parliamentary secretary to the prime minister with regard to this action with with China, possibly. So they're looking at it as a venture format in this particular case, as he has stated, which would uh, how do you put it? Um, yeah, it's not looking at the not looking at it looks like here that they're not looking to bring in BYD itself and create a BYD plant, but that it would indeed be a situation in which, because David Cochrane, I should say, asked the good question when he was asking, investment can take many forms. So, what kind of investment is it? Is it auto manufacturing? Is it batteries? Is it all that kind of stuff? Right? What is it specifically? And of course, again, Mr. Roy is not able to say absolutely everything, right? But he is indicating that it would be something that would be majority Canadian or North American owned as an equity play. So the company in question would be able to bring in elements of the Chinese supply chain, but recognizing that they have to work with existing players like, Magna, for example, that already exists in Ontario in terms of car parts and suppliers and stuff like that. So it's looking here like whatever Doug Ford is worried about isn't necessarily uh, the situation that's being presented. And again, that Doug Ford appears not to be aware of this, considering that even though he claims he was not asked beforehand, even though the text of the agreement so far is written and he can read it, and that the prime minister had a special meeting by phone, I'm going to guess, with all the first ministers following the announcement in China. There should be no longer any confusion from the Doug Ford camp. They should have some sense of an idea, because anything that Cody Blois is telling us here is stuff that he could have told Doug Ford, and probably could have told him more if Doug Ford, of course, agrees to keep certain things quiet. So why it is that Doug Ford is out there pretending that this situation is different than it seems to be, um, is a bit confusing. I mean, it's probably good for him politically for his sort of protect Ontario mantra. I got to protect Ontario from these Chinese cars. Blah, blah, blah. But, if Doug Ford truly was interested in protecting Ontario, he wouldn't have been out of the loop. He would have been somewhere with his nose in all that type of business, trying to find out what was going on at every second and trying to be involved in every second. But he'd rather ski-doo at his cottage and not do the job of being a legislator more than 60 days a year, let's just say. So, if Doug Ford has been left out of the loop, it would seem that Doug Ford has no one to blame except Doug Ford. It's not particularly, he's made it clear that he fully intends to only be a part-time premier. So, if you're not there, you can't be asked. But it does look like this is an initiative to have China working with Canadian companies to bolster the supply chain over here. And if that would be the case, then Doug Ford doesn't necessarily have too much to worry about in that particular sense. So yeah, it's a bit of a mystery to us how Doug Ford appears to still wanting to claim that he is so uninformed. I think he thinks that this is a good look for him, in that, oh me, look at me, I'm the victim. They did this behind my back. But like I said, all it does for me is make me wonder how is it possible that this could have been done behind your back? Maybe if you were at your job more, that wouldn't have happened. But maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just me. Kit Bucky here. Again, I agree that 3% access is reasonable, but I'm not convinced that this investment is coming. That is the thing with these such deals. Sometimes the investment does not come. Does happen. Look at all those deals that the United States signed with all those countries in exchange for a whole bunch of investment. How much of that investment came? Not sure. Give time a rest here, says Scott Reed has an interesting take on this leverage. Yes, we've mentioned that on the show as well. It could be indeed that there is a leverage here. Hey, United States, you do not want an auto industry to exist in Canada whatsoever because we don't have anything that you need, and you don't want to buy our cars. We want to do them all in the United States. Well, we've got this little deal going on with China here, and you know. To use Trump words against him and Trump's speak against him. So we didn't want to do it, but you made us do it. We told you not to try to decimate our auto industry because we would have to do something to adapt. Ooh, look what you made me do. Look what you made me do. Look what you just made me do. Look what you just made me do. There is still some time for us to go back on that if you are willing to go back on your claims that you do not want to buy any cars from Canada. On the other side, however, of that, the part that Scott Reed did not mention, because I did listen to that episode of Curse of Politics, I think it was, where he was mentioning that. The other side of that, however, could be China might also not react too fondly to Donald Trump's threats of wanting to decimate the Canadian auto industry that China is trying to get a bigger toehold in. There is also the possibility that Donald Trump might turn around and puff up his chest, and China might look at him and puff up its chest a little more. Said, Donald, we now have interests in Canada, and we are going to defend those. So you might want to pump your brakes a bit there. Not saying that this is the reason for which we did it, but saying that we do know how China reacts to certain things. And once China does have an interest somewhere, China likes to preserve it somehow. The 100% tariffs did put a chink in, well, no, I don't want to say that. That's a terrible word. Did put a dent in the armor. And this is an opportunity for China to repair that dent in the armor. Maybe China is not all that inclined to have its armor dented with regard to gaining access to the North American market as much as it wants. And China might turn around and not protect or defend us, because I'm sure that's not an agreement, that an arrangement that we would like to have happen. But China might be inclined to defend its interest. And if that happens to help us, that's a happy bonus. But definitely, it does create an opportunity for leverage. It also creates the opportunity for leverage in the sense that, yes, United States, you think you could push us around because you think that we are hopeless and so tied to you. But again, you fail to recognize that, unlike you, other countries like us, unlike you, other countries are wanting to do more business with us, whereas other countries are trying to find ways to circumvent you. So yeah, you thought we were this helpless little thing because we had been so integrated and dependent on you. But turns out we're not. And if you don't want us to keep looking elsewhere on all the other areas in which we trade lots, like aerospace, that means a lot to you, or fertilizers, that means a lot to you, or critical minerals, that means a lot to you, maybe you want to be nicer. We've done a lot for you, United States. Now it's time you do something for us. See, that's the problem with engaging in that type of rhetoric, is that it can land back on your nose at any given time. Because when you're in a cooperative, interdependent world, everybody does something for someone else at some point. So if the rules are going to be, we've done for you, now you must do for us, well, then that allows everybody else to go, well, if we're playing according to those rules, here's all the things we've done for you. So what have you done for me lately? The Janet Jackson School of Diplomacy. What have you done for me lately? Ooh, yeah. Hey, if we're going to be transactional, it's a two-way street. I'm just saying, it's a two-way street. Okay. Other things we want to look at today. Prime Minister's travels, doing a lot of business. Spent some time in Qatar. And as a result of that, according to Carl Duggan of the Canadian Press, Prime Minister Mark Carney says Qatar has committed, quote, to significant strategic investments for Canada's major building projects. That capital will get projects built faster, quote, supercharge energy industries and create jobs for Canadians, he said during a news conference in Doha, Qatar's capital. Calling it a, quote, new chapter in bilateral relations, Carney said the two countries will also strengthen people-to-people cultural ties, which will include expanding direct flights from Canada to Qatar to boost tourism and business. Quote, when the people of different countries are familiar with each other's cultures and perspectives, they're enriched and they trust each other more, he said. And they also want to do more together to build together. Carney said after years of stalled negotiations, Canada aims to finalize the investment promotion and protection agreement with Qatar by this summer. Canada will also install a defense attaché in Doha to deepen partnerships on defense. Earlier, and one of the reasons for this is that Qatar is a country that has a diplomacy position, is that they will engage with all sides. So enemies, foes, whatnot, and they are often used as a relay and a go-between, for example, in the Middle East when things are being negotiated because they have that policy. Earlier Sunday, Carney received an official welcome at a ceremony and met with the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. The Prime Minister had extended an invitation for the Emir to visit Canada later this year. A readout from the Prime Minister's office says the leaders discussed growing Canada's relations with Qatar and have agreed to stay in touch, with Carney inviting the Sheikh to Canada in the coming years. Prime Minister Mark Carney thanked His Highness for the warm welcome and hospitality, the readout said. Carney's visit is an effort to boost trade and partnerships in artificial intelligence, infrastructure, energy, and defense with the Gulf country. It comes after he and several cabinet ministers met earlier this week with top political and business leaders in Beijing, where they worked to forge stronger trade and bilateral ties with China. It's part of the Liberals government's broader push to drum up new investment and expand trade ties beyond Canada's traditional allies, such as the United States. Outside the Amiri Diwan, the heart of the Qatari government, a group of men riding camels lined up on the grass. Armed men on horseback wearing bandoliers lined the path to greet the Prime Minister's motorcade. Inside, a cadre of Canadian cabinet ministers, including Industry Minister Mélanie Joly, Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand, and Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne, lingered in an intricately designed waiting room. During the welcome ceremony, a band played the anthems of both countries. Carney and the Emir exchanged pleasantries, shaking hands and posing for photos in front of Canadian and Qatari national flags. They also shook hands with each other's accompanying team of ministers. Carney will wrap up his 9-day trip abroad by attending the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. So as was the agreements with Saudi Arabia. For some reason, there's not a lot of details on the agreements, only that certain have been signed and that they will bring a lot of business, but we don't necessarily have well, with the Saudis, we had a bit of a dollar amount, 600 million. We don't have a dollar amount with regard to the Qataris. And we have general business areas that we are looking at: artificial intelligence, infrastructure, energy, and defense, but no specifics. So a little interesting that so far the three Mid Eastern stops, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE, just have general overall investment areas and sometimes a dollar figure but not specifics like we have with China, where stuff has been hammered out. So I'm guessing that there's probably more to come with regard to these ones, but a whole lot less news in terms of specifics to report when it comes with the agreements that we made so far with nations in that Gulf region. That's just a detail that I have noted of late. So that's what is going on with Qatar. And then, of course, the Prime Minister is in Davos, Switzerland now to talk again at the World Economic Forum. He will probably be addressing the forum as well, if I remember correctly. According to Dylan Robertson of the Canadian Press, we have this. Prime Minister Mark Carney arrived in Switzerland on Monday to join the global power elite for the World Economic Forum in the ski resort town of Davos, where he's looking to drum up investment from other countries and corporations. The forum puts Carney together with the movers and shakers he encountered during his past work as a central banker and United Nations envoy. Quote, "It is clearly a significant meeting of what you might call globally influential elite coming from a variety of backgrounds and those representing capital around the world," said University of British Columbia political scientist Stuart Prest. "There can be a celebrity element as well, and leading policymakers from around the world are present. This summit is happening at a moment of populist frustration with politics," Prest said, adding Carney's attendance risks courting voter backlash against, quote, "what seems like a cushy gig." But U.S. President Donald Trump's global trade war and threats against national sovereignty make attending Davos less politically risky for Carney right now, Prest adds. Agreed. Quote, "There's still suspicion of that kind of global wealth and power, but there's also recognition that these are difficult times and that Canada needs to find allies wherever it can. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has railed against the globalist Davos elites and has pledged to ban any cabinet led by him from attending the WEF, an organization that has been the subject of numerous conspiracy theories, a lot of them based in anti-Semitism." My editorial addition. The conservatives say the attendees are out of touch with the needs of Canadians. Prest noted that the former Conservative Prime Minister Stephen Harper attended Davos in 2010 and 2012 when the country was recovering from the global recession and still played, quote, "a muscular role in the world, though it's through its resilient banking sector and contribution to the NATO mission in Afghanistan." Poilievre was an MP in Harper's caucus at the time. Canada then, as now, had something to say that other countries would be interested in hearing, and Mr. Harper, as any good politician would, took advantage of that, he said. Poilievre was essentially part of a government that took active part in these kinds of discussions for the same reasons we see Mr. Carney doing so. If you excuse me, I just need to grab a sip of water here. My throat's getting a little dry. Former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau also attended Davos in 2016 and 2018, though Prest said he did not have the same gravitas that Carney brings to the summit. Carney is somebody who doesn't really have to justify his presence in a conversation like this because he very clearly understands macroeconomics in a granular way. And so that means it's a different proposition for him to go to a place like Davos. He is speaking the language of those who are there, and they are going to be interested in what he has to say, not only as a representative of Canada, but actually as someone with considerable expertise and background in the issues that are going to be discussed. Carney is set to give speeches Tuesday and Wednesday aimed at luring investment to Canada before returning to Ottawa. Again, luring. I do not like that word. Why not say just attracting? Luring always sounds like it's happening in the shadows and in the dark, and you're rubbing your hands together. He is set to leave Switzerland on Wednesday and might depart before Trump is set to speak at Davos at 9:30 a.m. Ottawa time. seems that that's a trend. Trump's unpredictability could upend the entire gathering, Prest said. The United States looks to be actively trading away its status as a global hegemon, with interests and influence around the world for a kind of Western hemispheric bully that is a remarkable retrenchment. It's a step back, he said. The world, in a realist lens, is a matter of finding ways to defend your own sovereignty and support the prosperity of your country by whatever means necessary. So there you go. The Prime Minister on the strips going to drum up more business. Hopefully, we will find out that there are more deals that have been signed or things that have discussions that have started for deals to be signed eventually with regard to that. All right. We also have Kits and Cubs latest inflation data for Canada, which has just come out, and we'll have that from Yahoo Finance. Says that inflation in Canada is up more than expected in December, but that the core measures have cooled. And this is according to John McFarlane, senior reporter for Yahoo Finance. Canada's annual inflation rate picked up steam to 2.4% in December, according to Statistics Canada data published Monday. Financial industry observers had expected the inflation rate to remain in line with the 2.2% rise recorded in November, according to consensus estimates published by BMO. The GST-HST holiday, which was introduced in December 2024 and brought prices down, was a key factor in the comparative rise, the agency said. Economists widely pointed out that although the headline number rose, various core measures have slowed considerably, which the Bank of Canada may find more noteworthy given the tax holiday's impact. Quote, while the headline rate was above expected, the details were somewhat softer, and the bank will likely be encouraged by the pullback in most core CPI measures, BMO chief economist Douglas Porter wrote in a note to clients. However, there certainly is not enough here to push the Bank of Canada towards more cuts. It would take a serious deterioration in the economy and some further signs of core inflation decelerating to again open the door for renewed policy easing. We're simply not there yet. TD economist Leslie Preston has a similar view, noting that while the Bank of Canada has said it is reviewing how it evaluates underlying inflation, the central bank's official core inflation metrics, CPI median and CPI trim, both cooled further in December. Zeroing in on trends over the past 3 months, trim and median inflation were running only at 1.5% and 1.9% annualized, now below the Bank of Canada's 2% target. With the current subdued state of underlying inflation, the Bank of Canada's policy rate is unlikely to change this year, CIBC economist Andrew Grantham wrote. And if you've been noticed, because we've been following these numbers monthly, we have been mentioning the difference, how the Bank of Canada has been seeing the long-term trend with regard to CPI median and CPI core reducing and reducing and reducing. They saw things that would baked in that would indicate that as these next months would come by, that those metrics would lower, and that they are now lowered even below the Bank of Canada's 2% target rate. On a monthly basis, CPI fell 0.2% in December. Seasonally adjusted, CPI rose 0.3%. Lower gasoline prices versus a year ago put the most downward pressure on the headline inflation rate. Gas prices fell 7.1% from November and 13.8% compared to December 2024. CPI excluding gas rose 3% from a year ago. Here, there's a graph here. I'm going to show it to you here, and it has the three metrics. It says CPI trim and CPI median. So we have the CPI, as we can see, we hit a peak of 8.1. That's the headline number that we always get. And it is now coming in at 2.4 here for December. And then the CPI trim here hit a maximum of 5.7 somewhere in 2022. And the CPI trim is now sitting at 2.7%. And CPI median, which hit a high of 5.2% in October and in July of 2025, is now sitting somewhere in between at 2.5%. All right, getting back to the article here. Crude oil prices have declined to their lowest point in over 4 years amid a continued oversupply in global markets, among other factors. To higher restaurant prices, which rose 8.5%, caused by the absence of the GST-HST holiday, prices for food purchased from stores gained 5% from a year earlier, with coffee and beef prices up significantly. Other categories affected by the previous year's tax holiday include alcoholic beverages, toys, games, and hobby supplies, children's clothing, and select grocery items such as potato chips and candy. Meanwhile, other aspects of the December report were mixed. Airfares, which reliably spiked during the holiday travel season, were up 34.5% from the previous month, but were down 0.8% compared to December 2024. Hotel charges, however, fell 10.8% year over year. In shelter, rents were up 4.9% from a year ago, but mortgage interest costs rose just 1.7%. Telephone services were up 13% since December 2024, the largest annual increase since 1982, BMO's Porter said. Annual inflation rose compared to November in 9 of 10 provinces, Statistics Canada said, with a deceleration in BC recorded because traveler accommodation prices fell dramatically compared to December 2024, when a series of Taylor Swift concerts drove up room rates. And there we go. That is the news, the take on it from Yahoo Finance Canada. Oddly enough, for some reason, not much mention about food inflation in this particular version of the article. I am going to look to the CBC to see if there's anything there. There's absolutely nothing mentioned too much about food inflation, although, however, I will look to see groceries because sometimes they refer to it that way. And yes, indeed. It says here, grocery price growth was unchanged between November and December, but rose to 5% when compared to the same time last year, with coffee and fresh or frozen beef still driving the increase. Quote, while the headline rate was above expected, the details were somewhat softer, and the bank will likely be encouraged by the pullback in most core inflation measures, Porter said in his note to clients. However, there certainly is not enough here to push the Bank of Canada towards more cuts. And again, that quote about it would take a serious deterioration. Alongside December's inflation report, Statistics Canada also released its annual review of consumer prices for 2025. Inflation rose 2.1% on an annual average basis last year after a 2.4% increase in 2024. It was the smallest annual average increase since 2020, though prices have still risen 19.9% over the last 5 years, the data agency said. With energy excluded, prices rose 2.6% in 2025, the same as the year before. The price of services grew at a rate of 3.1% compared to 4.1% in 2024, mostly driven by slower growth in mortgage interest costs as the Bank of Canada made cuts to its key interest rate. The growth rate for shelter prices, including rent, slowed in general. By contrast, the price of goods grew at a higher rate in 2025 compared to the year before. Higher prices for passenger vehicles drove price growth for durable goods, according to Statistics Canada. Grocery prices also grew at a faster pace, 3.5% compared to 2024's 2.2%, with higher prices for coffee, cocoa beans, and sweets largely to blame. Coffee and cocoa beans have been impacted by weather-related changes in growing regions, while refined coffee and sweets were impacted by U.S. tariffs on producing countries. Or to hear Pierre Poilievre say, it's all Carney's fault. Meat prices rose 5.8%, with fresh and frozen beef up 13.5%, as North American cattle inventories sank to historic lows. Again, allegedly, if we're listening to Pierre Carney's fault. Prices for fresh food were up, particularly oranges. The price of eating out at a restaurant increased 2.6% in 2025, a tad lower than 2024's 3.6% rate. And as we mentioned, wage growth is in at about the 3.4%, around there. So as well. So when you look at inflation, you also have to look at wage growth. So wage growth is higher than inflation for 2025, which is good. But again, groceries and shelter, which are the things that everybody needs, are higher than the core inflations, or at least grocery is. Shelter has gone down, fortunately, and is well within range, or maybe even a little below range or something. But shelter is back under control. Grocery prices, however, are not. And again, if we're talking about weather-related changes or things having to do with either illnesses to cattle, like to cattle or fowl, for example, when all those birds needed to be culled and the price of eggs went up a lot in the United States, or if you get a drought and there's not enough pasture for grazing, then cattle, of course, the inventory of cattle decreases, and as the middle class in the world grows and more people develop an appetite for protein-rich diets, the demand for more and more limited cattle increases. And when you have decreasing supply and increasing demand, you have rising prices that are not the fault of just one man. So, but yes, uh, still important to know um, in terms of sorry, I have something in my throat again. Sorry, kids and cubs. There you go. Sorry, but still important to be aware, and of course, um, what we say here on the show always to remember that we are indeed in a K-shaped uh, economy where people who are at the bottom 40 percent or so of us are experiencing life a whole lot differently than those of us who are in the top 20%. Most of us in top 20% who own homes and perhaps own stocks and have retirement pensions that are invested in the stock market, which has been doing relatively well. To have been doing relatively has been doing very well. In particular, if you're invested in the Canadian stock market, the Toronto stock market is the one that grew the most over the past year out of all the indices in the world. I think it had over 35% growth over last year. So you are doing well. You're doing well. And here I just went to check wage growth in Canada for 2025 shows a projected average salary increase of around 3.4%. So again, uh, overall, all your spending, your wages grew higher than inflation. You should be doing better. But if you are in the lower percentage of the group, if you're on the bottom of that K-shaped economy, where a greater percentage of your disposable income goes towards things like food and shelter and basic utilities and that type of stuff, you probably don't feel, and maybe for you, your salary is not growing faster than inflation because the things that you need to buy, and especially have been the things that have been hit on the higher end of the inflation scale rather than the lower end. So again, just always having to keep a thought when we're hearing these macroeconomic numbers about it's not benefiting everyone equally in our economy based on where we are in it. Okay. The last thing I had for you with regard to this is that um, we had been looking at there's all these threats that are coming from Trump, right? We got threatened with an extra 10% tariff on something some time ago, which didn't appear to materialize. There are additional tariffs being talked about for European nations if they dare contradict Trump on Greenland. Tariffs if you dare not to accept his position to make him leader of the world by sitting on his global board of peace. I believe Canada was threatened with another tariff at some point not too long ago. There's so many of them that I actually forget when and where they are, but it seems to me like just last week or something. There might have been another tariff that we were threatened with because it did cause me to look at a couple of things, data points along the way. And I was wondering, how the markets would be reacting to all of this threat. And today, there might be some considerable movement. Markets in the United States were closed yesterday because it was Martin Luther King Day in the United States, which is a holiday, and the markets were not trading. So that part, we had an extra day sort of to wait and see what would be the impact of Trump threatening more tariffs uh, on Europe, for example. Um, 5 days ago, I looked at the markets when Trump had made his comment about NAFTA being rather irrelevant to him. Um, and the markets essentially yawned after that happened. And you would think that if the president of the United States threatens to maybe, well, he didn't threaten to tear it up, but says that the deal that has led to the most successful uh, trade relationship between any two nations on the planet was going to have an issue, that perhaps um, markets would react to that. And the day after he did, the Toronto Stock Exchange closed up for the day. The Dow closed down by 0.086%, which was hardly a thing. And bond yields on the Canadian 10-year bond actually decreased, and same thing for the 30-year bond, actually decreased. You would expect if there was some danger that these bond yields would increase because we would be determined more risk. This morning, however, the Dow futures market was indicating that there would be a drop of 684 points, 642 points at the open for the Dow, which would bring it down 1.3% for the day. Since the markets are already open, let's take a look at it. The Dow is down 663.96 to open. So the threat of the U.S. threat to Europe of more tariffs and the European threat of a bazooka retaliation has indeed affected the markets a little bit. 1.35% is not a lot, of course, relatively speaking, but is still something to be noted. With regard to that, the Asian stock markets over the course are all down pretty much except for the one in Taiwan, but all of them are down between 0.01% and 1.28%. And European markets, they're all down as well between 0.67% and 1.28%. So no major drops here, but still some interesting moves. When we're looking at the Canadian dollar had taken a little bit of a dip because it was trading above 73 cents on December 26th and dropped to under 72 cents on the 16th, but is back up again over 72 cents today. So we're going up and down between the high 71s and low 73s there, but we're just vacillating within that range. Nothing is pulling us too much out of that. Now, things that could be interesting, however, again, is if you're looking at the bond markets. And this is a little more interesting here in that, again, we have been trading within a solid range since about the 5th of December. So we're about 3.42% on the 10-year bond for Canada. And also, let's see, for the 30-year bond, the coupon yield is 3.871%. The thing that has been very interesting between that is if we are looking at the spreads between the Canadian bond yields and the US bond yields, those have been increasing. And that's where things get a little interesting. So, for example, the US 30 Treasury bond is at 4.923%, and Canadians 3.868%. The coupon rate on the 30-year bond, the spread between them is growing here. And I will show you here, kits and cubs, so that you can take a look for yourself. Right here, if we look at the US 30-year bond on October 28th, the coupon rate was 4.547%. The coupon rate is the amount of interest that the United States, whoever the United States government would have to pay whoever uh, has the bond. That has increased, and you can see here in the last little bit, has increased sharply to 4.923%. So that's almost a 0.5% change within the space of a couple of months here. And when your bond coupon rate goes up, it's indicating to the world, it's indicating that the world thinks that your bond rate is riskier, that they're least likely to get their money back. So you have to give them more to assure them. So as you can see how this rate is going up with the 30-year in, the 30-year US one. If we look at the 30-year Canadian one, however, it's much smaller. So when we were at the lowest of the low around again end of October, we were at 3.51%. We're at 3.86%. So both of ours have gone up, but the United States is going up at a higher pace than ours is. If this trend continues, right, that does mean that we are looking more and more and more like a better risk than the United States is. And so there's similar dynamics happening with the 10-year bond rate as well. So United States is potentially doing some damage to itself here. And I believe, if I am not mistaken, we had a little bit of an update from our friend Olga Nestorova of the Honest News Network, where we hope to get her on the show again relatively soon here. But there's a lot going on. But she mentions here, Europe may be beginning selling U.S. assets in response to new conflict with the U.S., a move that could trigger a dollar collapse, Bloomberg reports. Deutsche Bank analysts warn Washington's key vulnerability is living off global financing, and Europe may decide it no longer wants to bankroll the U.S. And again, as we've been stating on this show, number one, never fuck with very, 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 very rich people's money, which is what Donald Trump is doing. Yes, and never fuck with people who understand the bond market. Donald Trump has done both at the moment. So yeah, basically, as we've been saying on the show, the U.S. Treasury is the world's largest casino. I mean, it is literally a license to print money, and Donald Trump is in the process of bankrupting yet another casino. Again, Europe may begin selling U.S. assets in response to a new conflict with the U.S., a move that could trigger a dollar collapse, Bloomberg reports. Deutsche Bank analysts warn Washington's key vulnerability is living off global financing. The United States debt is so high at the moment. The only reason the United States can continue borrowing at the rate that it is because it is the global reserve currency. If people start selling U.S. assets, and then you also have to consider that a lot of countries own a lot of United States debt, including Canada, right? I think we over $400 billion in debt, close to. Canada holds a significant but not leading portion of U.S. debt, with holdings fluctuating, but generally around $370 billion to $400 billion, ranking among the top foreign owners alongside Japan, China, and the U.K. If, again, those words that make my little beaver heart happy, coordinated action, start happening, there could be an issue for the United States. The United States has significantly more total government debt, 36 trillion versus Canada's 1.8 trillion. even when you do it measure to relative to economic size, debt to GDP, the U.S. is higher, over 100%, versus about 42% for Canada's federal debt. Said if those bond rates start going up, if credit ratings start going down, the cost of servicing that debt for the United States starts to go up significantly, and the size of the debt makes that a situation that is not sustainable over a very long period of time. If European countries are considering selling U.S. assets, if people are going to start considering selling U.S. debt, or calling U.S. debt, that could definitely send the bond markets into a tailspin. So keep your eyes on that, because that's where internal pressure within the United States may start being felt. Donald Trump might have to, if Donald Trump keeps on being Donald Trump, lashing out at everybody who dares oppose him, Donald Trump will start lashing out against people he really needs to keep him in the position that he is in. And they may not be down with that. You know, it was okay when you were wanting to, like, send, X number of people or X kind of people to these kinds of places to have terrible things to do that. But if you're talking about actually putting my money at risk, we need to have a conversation. You might not be the best person for this job anymore. We liked you when you were trying to do that transfer of wealth from the bottom towards the top, doing that whole trickle up stuff, where you would, give us all that, those $4 billion tax cuts and all that kind of stuff. But if you're actually going to try and destabilize the international markets on which we rely on to make money and keep on making money, we're sorry, you have to go. We have to put somebody else there who'll be a little more responsible with our money. So, yeah, that may be happening here. Again, there's a little warning here from the bond markets that there could be something happening here. We'll see if it continues growing, because that will definitely be an issue. But yeah, I'm looking again. Said the other thing to note about the difference between the 30-year bond between the U.S. and Canada is that here I'm seeing the yield on the U.S. 30 Treasury at 4.91%. Whoops, that's a mistake on my part here. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, the computer has decided to go awry on me, so let's just forget that point. That I went down that path. So yeah, keep your eyes open, because that's where the real pressure may come from the inside, and may come from countries threatening to liquidate whatever United States holdings that it has, thus causing bond yields to change, and maybe credit rating agencies to change their long-term outlook on the health of the U.S. economy. And that might be enough to apply the pressure that will frighten people into making moves that actually are in the best interest of everybody. Well, the best interest of people, just not the best interest exclusively of Donald Trump. Just saying. Yeah. We are living in some very, very, very weird times, kids and cubs. That's all I can say. Boy, All right, kids and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we love making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us because we really appreciate it when you do, especially when you share a little bit of why it is that our content resonates with you because that is advertising we cannot buy. It is priceless. And you are influencers in your own circles. So that helps us when you do. And thank you so much for that. Now, kids and cubs, when we do have our podcasts up and running again, well, then, hey, you can go to our pod page. That would be podpage.com/the truenortheagerbeaver with a hyphen between each one of those words, which is sponsored by the Ray Girl, which is absolutely fantastic. And when we will have our podcasts again, if you click subscribe, they will come directly to your podcast feed and will be waiting for you there. You don't even have to go looking for them. They will be right there. They will just pop up and appear. And that way you can pop us in your ears and take us with you while you go and take on the day. So therefore you can do democracy and remain informed, or take care of your family and remain informed all at the same time. There you go. We try to make it easy for you. Now, kids and cubs, if you would like to, hey, help us, there are two ways you can do that. First of all, at the urging of Kits Cassie and Kits Elaine, you can make your way on down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page and click on our buttons, like, share, and subscribe. Remember, if you're watching now, if you smash now, you don't have to remember to do it before you leave. So go ahead, smash away, get freaky, like, share, and subscribe. Give them all a little click. It helps us with the algorithm. And when our numbers go up, it gets us a little bit of happy. So thank you for that. And kids and cubs, if there are other ways you would like to help us, let's say financially, because we do incur some costs to bring the show to you, we would be grateful for your support. If you are listening in YouTube, we have the Super Chat membership features, and we thank you for all of you who support us that way on an ongoing basis. It means the world to us. We also have our coffee page, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, and you can scan that QR code to bring you there, and that will bring you to our emergency hydration fund, where a couple of loonies or toonies is all you need to keep your favorite beaver moist and happy. So if you would like to ensure that I do remain moist and happy, a couple of toonies or loonies falling into the bottom of that jar, making that lovely sound when it hits the bottom, does make our day and lets us know that you like what it is that we do and that you see some value in it. And we definitely appreciate receiving that as a compliment. We look at it as an expression of encouragement on your part to keep going and do more. So thank you for all the encouragement that you send us, kids and cubs. It does mean the world to us. And trust me, goes a long way to try to bring the show to you. It really does. Also, kids and cubs, I think that's everything I did. Yes. Oh, sorry. If you're doing the Buy Canadian thing, then if you want to support the show, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is our email address. And if you do a direct bank-to-bank transfer, that way, no U.S. tech company will get a share of your donation, and then we'll take a share of that donation, give it back to Donald Trump as tribute in order to do bad things to us. That share of your donation would come to us as well. So we would get 100% of it, and that means more beaver bang for your beaver buck. There you go. That's always a very, very good deal. If you're not able to contribute financially, do not worry, kids and cubs, because that same email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, is the one you can use to make a contribution of another kind. Like, for example, letting us know what you think about the show, or having a guest suggestion for us, or sending us some articles that you think we should be abreast of. All this stuff is very important, as well as the Kids Who Cook hashtag. Remember that. If you are making something yummy and tasty, please take a picture and let us see what it is, because we love to live vicariously through your yummy, yummy, yummy treats. And plus, it gives me some cooking ideas as well. So thank you, kids and cubs, for all that you do. Because democracy is something that you do. My nose is really itchy today. Because democracy is something that you do, kids and cubs, remember on February 7th. You will be voting if you live on Prince Edward Island and have registered to vote for the new leader of the Progressive Conservative Party. And so there are two candidates in that race. Rob Lance, who had been working as the interim premier for a while but stepped down in order to enter the leadership race, and Mark Ledwell. And if you are following that, remember on the 22nd will be the second leadership forum, which will take place at the Cavendish Farms Wellness Center in Montague, with the vote, as I mentioned, happening on February 7th, which is your final day to vote online in person. So please do make sure that you get your votes in. We also have our two petitions for you, Kits and Cubs. We have House of Commons petition E6821, which would encourage MPs to introduce legislation and pass it that would require majority Canadian ownership and control of print, digital, and other non-audiovisual news media to protect Canadian sovereignty and ensure journalism integrity, and guarantee that our media reflects the priorities and values of Canadians. And we now are at 14,491 signatures on that one. It is growing fast as more people are becoming aware of the petition and liking what its purpose is. The other one that we have for you is House of Commons petition E7027, which encourages the Minister of Health to recommend and support within Cabinet the exercise of the Government of Canada's constitutional authority, including the power of disallowance under Section 90 of the Constitution Act of 1867, to annul or repeal provincial legislation enacted in Alberta and Saskatchewan that restricts the rights of transgender and gender diverse people, as and has been shielded from charter scrutiny through the use of the Notwithstanding Clause, as well as to affirm the federal government's responsibility to uphold charter rights across Canada. And this one is now at 29,117 signatures, Kits and Cubs, and we need to work to get it at least over 30,000. So I'm putting that in there as well. You have the links to both of those, and you are now able to share them with your circles in order to get them to participate. And then finally, Kits and Cubs, if you happen to be living in the area where there will be the high-speed rail in the Quebec to Windsor protocol, there are a series of consultations going on. There are open house information sessions, there are virtual information sessions, and there's an online consultation form. But yes, they are. There's a way to allow to participate in the public consultation. MP Mark Garrettson from Kingston and the Islands is trying to encourage people to participate in that, to ask that the high-speed rail go through Kingston rather than Peterborough, as is the original plan. Of course, I'm pretty sure that there would probably be some representative from the Peterborough area asking people to write and encourage them to remain going through that area. So there's lots of things you can consult on, or that you can provide your opinion about the path, and where you think stops would like to be, or whether if you have any environmental concerns about what is going to be needed in order to get this built, budgetary concerns as well, all of that. So please participate if you can. We will put the link here in the chat. There you go. And I believe the public consultation period is open for a while yet, because I think it just started, and it may be on for a while yet. I do not have any dates on the top of my head here that seems to indicate when. There are some public consultation events scheduled for Montreal, starting in Ottawa on the 21st and 22nd, specifically if you happen to be there. And it says that Alto open houses are provided in English and French in locations accessible to attendees with reduced mobility. On-site interpretation services in Quebec Sign Language and American Sign Language will also be available. Events in Montreal are taking place at what's called Le Y des Femmes de Montréal, so the Montreal Women's YMCA, and in Ottawa they'll be taking place at the Bayview Yards. And so there you go. There are information sessions at 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. in both cities, and then it continues on. There'll be some in Laval on the 28th. There will be some in Brownsburg, I'm gonna guess. Um, the Brownsburg area and Van Cleek Hill on the 29th, in Terrebonne on the 3rd, Toronto on the 11th, and Saint Eustache on the 5th, also in Toronto on the 5th of February. Those are the ones coming up soon. So if you have anything to say about that, please do participate. And there you go. Words of wisdom, kids and cubs. Oh, see, I'm just looking outside. It is a beautiful sunshine, blue, sunny day here. I had assessed right here. Oh, it looks like, oh, I'm going to go out today and enjoy this beautiful weather. We haven't had much sunshine this winter. It's mostly been cloudy days. So I'm definitely going to go out and enjoy this today. Um, so yeah, words of wisdom. If it's a nice sunshiny day where you are, regardless of how cold it may or may not be, if you have the opportunity, go out and get yourself a little vitamin D there today, and help yourself. Yeah. Oh my God, so nice. We haven't had. I am so happy that it's a beautiful blue sky day here. It's been very gray for so long. This is going to do a lot for my mood. All right, kids and cubs, it's time for the audience participation part of the show. As I say, please be kind to and gentle with yourselves. And now, at the count of 3, can you please say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock on 1, 2, and 3. Oh, yes, I hear you. I even hear a little Swiss yodeling back in there. How can I deny you? You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. Kids and Cubs, a little bit of Canadians who make us proud. The Canadian women's under 18 hockey team was taking on the United States in Cape Breton for the World Women's Junior Hockey Championship title. Unfortunately, team was shut out in the final as the United States went on to win a perfect gold, which means they didn't lose a match and never in any match had they trailed at any point ever on the way to securing gold this year. Congratulations to them. Team Canada, of course, was the defending champions, looking to make it another medal, gold for us. But still, silver. Very good performance. And interestingly, in the relegation, it was Hungary versus Finland. And Finland, which has been a perennial in the world top tier group, lost to Hungary and is now dropped to the B group for next year. So it's going to be interesting to see a World Juniors Championship next year without Finland in the mix in the main pools, because they've been a pretty much a permanent fixture since the start of international women's hockey gaining much more profile. So that was an interesting thing, and I believe the Czechs defeated the Swedes for the bronze in that tournament. It was a very, very bad day for Leila Fernandez yesterday, who was playing against someone who wasn't really well known, and Janice Chen of Indonesia, who played like an oncoming freight train, just relentless. And Fernandez was just simply not on her game yesterday. Made a valiant effort in the second set and the third set, but sorry, second set, third set. What am I talking about here? Um, Made a valiant effort to fight back, but in because there was no third set, that's why I said, "What am I talking about here?" And pushed the second set to a tiebreaker. But then Chen, who had been showing some nervousness at trying to close out some sets, had absolutely no problem in the tiebreaker, defeating Fernandez 7-1 in it and eliminating her. Fernandez hasn't made it past the second round of a Grand Slam in singles since last season, and is still among the top 32 in the world, which means that she must have been doing really well on all the other tournaments in order to maintain such a high ranking. But yes, another early exit in the singles, so it leaves only Denis Shapovalov for the men and Victoria Mboko advancing to the second round. Speaking of Victoria Mboko, she was also playing in doubles and won her first round match, 7-5, 6-3, playing with her partner, somebody I'm not familiar with myself, Iva Jovic of the United States. This seems to be a new partnership here, but is definitely scored the win yesterday to advance to the second round. Will there be any Canadians tonight? Yes, Mboko will be playing again tonight, her second round match against number 85 in the world, Katie McNally from the United States. Based on data and all that kind of stuff and precedents and how they're going right now, it looks like Mboko would be favored to win that one. Gabriela Dabrowski will play her first doubles match against the duo of Kessler and Pagula. So Jessica Pagula having a new doubles partner. Leila Fernandez will play her first round doubles match with her partner from Hungary, Timea Babos, against a team that is fairly highly ranked, the number 9th ranked team. So that might be a difficult proposition in terms of winning that match. So it might be an early exit for Leila Fernandez total at the Australian Open. And I think that those might be the only matches featuring Canadians today. So for those of you who are supporting that. As well, as we mentioned, Kids and Cubs, sorry, my phone was just ringing there. The National Figure Skating Championships took place a couple of weekends ago, and the Canadian Olympic team for Milano Cortina 2026 has been revealed. There was a bit of surprise in pairs as Leah Pereira and Trent Michaud skated to their first national title ahead of 2024 world champions Diana Stellato-Dudek and Maxime Deschamps. Both teams will head to Milano. Stephen Gogolev, who won his first senior national title to claim Canada's lone Olympic spot in men's single. The 21-year-old has been enjoying a stellar season after several years of severely disrupted by injuries. His potential has been known since he was a young teenager who finished second at the 2019 Canadian Championships when he was just 14 years old. And he is the only single skater to have won a medal on the Grand Prix circuit this year. He took a bronze at an event. Madeline Skizas had a rough short program. She was fourth after the short program, but bounced back really well to win her fourth national title in women's singles and a spot on her second Olympic team. Gabrielle Daleman, who a lot of Canadians might be familiar with, had competed there as well. She was hoping to win, but didn't. And that was her first real competition in about 3 years because she has been shadowed by every single injury in the book. She's 27 now and indicated after the Canadian Championships that she's not done yet. She still has some unfinished business. So, and Gabrielle Daleman, I believe, won a medal, I think a bronze at the World Championships one year in figure skating, if I'm not mistaken, and also helped Canada to a team medal at an Olympics in the past as well. So it's nice to see that she's still in the fight. Um, really still in the fight after all these injuries and really committed to the sport. By the way, that Olympics Games medal in the team event was a gold, by the way. Just mentioning it. And yes, a bronze at the World's Championships, silver at the Four Continents, 2 Canadian titles and 5 silver medals and 1 bronze, which she got. She did finish on the podium, and you could tell that she was completely elated by that, just making the podium this time, a long way back for her. And of course, kits and cubs, when we get to the ice dancers, all 3 teams that finished on the podium will be going to the Olympics. Piper Gillis and Paul Poirier won their 5th national title on Sunday, and that was a week ago Sunday, I think, and will lead, no, last Sunday, and lead Canada's figure skating team to Milano Cortina. No, it was the Sunday before. Sorry. I'm mistaken. I'm screwed up in my time there. And their fellow podium finishers in ice dance, silver medalists Marjorie Lajoie and Zachary Laga, and bronze medalists Marie-Jade Loriot and Romain Legac were also named to the Olympic team. All of them skated very, very, very well at the nationals. And if that trend continues, they will be performing quite well at the Olympics. And it is very possible that 2 of these teams could finish within the top 5. Out of the whole Olympics, Piper, Gillis, and Paul Poirier are the most likely to end up on a podium at some point along the way. And here we have a picture of Mikael Kingsbury, who we mentioned won his 100th World Cup victory in moguls. But here we have the full podium. This says the entire ice dance contingent that will be going to the Olympics representing Team Canada. And there was also some good news from the juniors. The person, and I wish I could remember her name, the person who won the gold medal in women's singles at the Canadian Figure Skating Championships, had a performance that was so spectacular. I think last year she was only 12 and couldn't even compete in the junior international competitions. This year she can, but she was less than half a point behind the score that Madeline Skeesis picked up in the seniors. Yeah, she is really something spectacular. Her name is Leah Cho. She broke her own junior women's record in terms of total points. So we'll be watching for her, because in a couple of years, she may be a very big deal on the world scene if she's already competing with scores. At 13 years old, she's getting scores that 20, 24, and 27-year-olds are getting after all that experience. So she's definitely going to be a light. Of course, there's always the growth spurt that happens with figure skating, so you always have to be careful about that. Things can change a lot, but she seems to have quite a lot of potential, and hers is a name we might be hearing a lot in the future. All right, that's all I got. So that's all I have for today. We will see you tomorrow. Amour et bisous. And please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And with that, I am